What's happening, everybody? Welcome to the lab. I'm your host, Diaz. Good to see you. Good to be here. And we have one of our favorites, Dr. Gary Brucato, in the house, clinical forensic psychologist, author of
both.
Oh, he's both. Okay. Well, I should know that by now. But he's author of The New Evil. You can pick it up any bookstore near you. It's a fascinating read, and it is about as in-depth as you can get, really. It's not a stocking stuffer, Dr. Gary has said, but, depending on who you're buying for, it could be. You never know. What do you think? I mean, it's a really big book, so it's not going to fit into a stocking. Or maybe it will.
No, it's about 600-700 pages.
Yeah. Can you imagine, it's like Christmas morning, and you The New Evil, Merry Christmas. Thank you. I could see that. I think I'm going to do that for somebody. That would just I think I'm going to do it for my sister. She'll be excited. Anyway, how you doing, Dr. Gary? Welcome.
I'm fine. The world is in interesting straits at the moment, and so everything's on kind of tender hooks, but basically okay.
It's like constant.
Internally fine, like the eye of a hurricane. Calm, but the outside is a hullabaloo, as Sylvia Plath put it. Yes.
Wait, what's that word? Hullabaloo?
Hullabaloo, kind of making a lot of noise.
Yeah, but I mean, would I find that in the dictionary?
Yeah.
Really?
Sure.
Nah, I don't think so.
That's how you gotta be. You gotta be like the eye of a hurricane.
Like a hullabaloo.
Like there's hullabaloo around you, but inside you're kind of like the eye, very kind of calm.
Somebody, let's see here. Let's got a couple nice little comments for you. Wendy says, I would recommend The New Evil for Christmas gifts. I can't put it down.
Okay.
I mean, that's got to be, that I'm sure that always.
That's sweet. I mean, it's hard to believe, but I appreciate it enormously. I mean, the book did do very well. I'm very proud of that. But the idea of somebody, on Christmas morning, surrounded by Christmas tree and tinsel and the crackling fire and whatever, opening up The New Evil is very funny to me. It's an odd,
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think that what I should
morbid to give someone for Christmas. You know what I mean?
You think so?
Oh, just what I always wanted. Funeral equipment. It's like a morbid thing to give someone. But hey, there are people out there who are like that.
I like it. Absolutely. And so we're going to take some phone calls from the audience today. And once again, no clinical advice, can be given, or, Dr. Gary's not going to diagnose you. Although sometimes I feel though, like when we sit and we talk, that you're diagnosing me privately in your head.
Well, I'm not diagnosing you. I just understanding you. The truth is I'm not really a fan of the construct of diagnosing.
Really?
I feel like people are a little more complicated than those silly labels.
It's funny because sometimes I'll be having a show or doing something and somebody goes, yeah, we should definitely clip that and send it to Dr. Gary. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think you should do that because, well, he doesn't like to diagnose people. So,
I mean, it's not only that I wouldn't, but I also think that it can be simplistic. I'm more interested in what is a person's kind of basic personality structure and range of defenses and what is their particular history. And then how does a person with that arrangement do under the weight of stress or in a particular, and then being able to predict, a person with this intellect, this style, personality, whatever, what do we envision they would do if we put them in this situation, that kind of thing. And
yeah,
so that's more complicated than thinking of a person as a diagnosis.
Well, I think you did one time diagnose me with brain damage.
Oh, you're talking about the joke about
Man.
the man bun.
Yeah.
We refuse to cover. That's one of those things like bell bottoms and things we just pretend never happened.
It's hard.
Pet rocks, we just let them slip into history, So moving along.
I'm just opening the lines right now.
I hope we're gonna get some good calls tonight. You never know what you're gonna get, So Forrest Gump kind of thing.
I think we get some. All right, that's great. You could hear that just fine?
I'm here.
All right, so I'm putting the number up at the bottom of the screen. The calling number is 707-677. Okay, well, that's not the right number. Hold on. Unbelievable.
Where on earth did you just direct them?
Well, I used to prank call this warm line. You know what a warm line is?
Do I want to know?
Yeah, it's just like if you're lonely, you can call and talk to like a volunteer at a call center.
Really?
Yeah.
If you're lonely.
Well, just for anything. If you want to talk to somebody, that they'll take your call. And so I abused it and then I got blocked.
You mean, I just want to make sure I understand this. So a person wants to just talk about anything. They're lonely. Mm-hmm. And they call up a random, is the person a trained professional or just a person sitting in their house eating bonbons, with the phone next to them? I don't understand. So it's just an ordinary citizen with a phone next to them and they take calls from people who are craving warmth?
Correct.
And the person says, hey, I'm just having a hard day. I just watched Terms of Endearment. I want to talk about it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, but you only have 15 minutes.
So in 15 minutes, you have to what? Like form a bond, get to know a person's personality, say something sensitive, or what?
I don't know. I mean, I just like, I don't know. I would just prank call them. So it didn't really matter. I got hung up on a couple times by people on the warm line, which I thought was awfully unwarm.
I have to be honest with you that sounds like a pretty sad thing to do. I mean, to be so lonely that you call a stranger and
I'm not lonely. I just did it to prank
you. Tell me about your mother. No, I'm only kidding. We're not here to analyze you, John. But I'm saying, in all seriousness, don't you think that that's a kind of a depressing thing that exists? And is it sadder for the person who takes the calls, who wants to be needed to that point?
I think it's sadder for the people that have to listen to whatever I have to say.
Dear Lord, get a pet.
Yeah, because like I was really into like prank calls for a long time, like up until, I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago. And I would like say like, oh, my son's pet peacock got murdered and having a hard time dealing with it. And, right off the bat, they're like, oh God, what's this about? And then eventually I get hung up on or sent right to the survey or, but I don't do that anymore because I'm not allowed to. I'm blocked.
You remind me of Ted Neely. You remember Ted Neely?
No.
Ted Neely was a guy that for years people thought he was Jerry Seinfeld using an alias, but he turned out to not be Jerry Seinfeld. But there's a guy called Ted Neely who would write. He wrote a series of books called Letters to a Nut, More Letters, letters from a nut, more letters from a nut, etc. Not really a fan of using the word nut in the way that they mean it, but the point is that he would write letters to hotels, stores, whatever, and he would say, he was upset about various things, and they took him very seriously, and then he would publish the extremely sensitive responses where people didn't realize that he was trolling them. So he would contact them and he'd say, my name is Pip the Mighty Squeak, and I'm a performer, and I lost the gigantic sword that I used to do a decapitation act in the circus and the toilet in your hotel. And I need everyone to go in and look for it because I weep daily without it. And then they would write him back and be like, we have thoroughly searched the grounds, sir. we're terribly sorry. Like, your sword is missing. Is there any way we could replace it? And it's just funny because
Yeah.
it's so specific and so bizarre. In one, he asked a hotel if he could have special aquatic equipment so he could bring it was something like a pike fish, like one of those big long fish that you get in the river with the fangs, and like keep it in the hotel room. And they actually tried to set up the fish tanks for him. Like, it bizarre. And you're reminding me of that with the peacock.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's a terrible thing, but
But I love anything where people are weird like that. The more bizarre, the more I love them.
belly buttons for days. All right, we're gonna take our first call here.
Belly buttons for days, right? Yeah.
All right, go ahead. You're on the air, caller. Thank you.
Wow. Who was that? Calvin Coolidge. Seriously, who was that? You don't get that joke, do you?
Can you hear them?
I heard nothing. Did you hear somebody?
Hold on one second. You can't hear the caller?
No. Do you?
Yeah.
What
Can you hear Dr. Gary?
About? This is the weirdest moment of my life. What is going on? Who are we talking to? Where am I?
I have a caller on the line.
The people in the audience don't hear the person either.
Sure. Yeah. Hold on one second, though. Let me see if I can figure this out. Seems like we always have just.
What are we going to do to fill the time? Should I awkwardly dance?
If you want, I mean, you can do whatever. Stare. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, tell me the question, and I'll ask Dr. Gary, and then I'll fix it. Sorry.
This is too much like a seance. I told you. Now it's getting weirder, like you're channeling them or something. Ask the question. It's weird. Can't you get them on the phone so we hear them? What is the person saying, Josh? This is like the Sixth Sense.
Let's see here. Hold on. Can you? Okay, Dr. Gary, you can hear me, right?
Yes, I hear you.
You hear me, but you okay. And I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question because Dr. Gary was mocking me ruthlessly. So go ahead and ask me one more time, and then I'll relay it, and then I'll fix it. This is an awful start to the show. It's my fault.
It's pretty funny, actually. This is ridiculous.
Okay. I got it. And I will, I'm going to drop the call and then I will relay that question. Thanks. Bye-bye. All right. So the question is from, and this is a real caller. I'm not making this up, Dr. Gary, but the question is, she has been hearing online, or not online, but like through mainstream media, that, sex trafficking is not a real thing. And I don't know where she's hearing that from, but that people are kind of denying that it's a problem. What is this? Is there some, do you know about that? Is there some psychology behind that, or do you know?
No, I mean, that's a very peculiar thing for somebody to deny. The reality is that trafficking of human beings for sexual and non-sexual purposes is a very real phenomenon and horrifying phenomenon. The denial of it is just like the denial of any other terrible thing that happens, because I suppose it's unacceptable or whatever. But to say that it doesn't exist is, I have to say, a profound insult to people that have been trafficked. The notion that it's not real is peculiar. But I think what's more interesting is to ask the question of why somebody would pretend that it wasn't real. Right. I mean, from a psychological perspective, I mean, traffic has been going on as long as there's been civilization. The objectification of people, using them, for those horrible things, kidnapping them, whatever. I mean, and also, where are they saying it doesn't exist? Is it a political motivation? I mean, whatever. Why would anybody say that's not real? I have no idea. But the short answer is yes, it's real. Be careful. It happens.
Yeah, and I mean, if there are people that say, that it's not real, it's just one of those things where I think people will just say anything to get a rise out of people too.
Well, there are trolls. There are people that are not especially bright. I mean, that's a whole. Don't forget that. And then there are some people that think that it is intelligent to simply question anything that you're told. Like if the newspaper says it, I'm smart because I say it's not true. That the contrarian attitude is mistaken sometimes for being intelligent. That is rather ridiculous, in my opinion. And then there is, of course, the type of person who deals in a kind of denial because it's just too painful to accept the reality that these vulnerabilities exist. Whether you're dealing with somebody in denial, somebody a little trollish, or somebody a little dim-witted, it doesn't matter. I mean, the fact is, it's real. There are a lot of things in this world that are real, whether we want them to be or not, and trafficking is one of them. I've heard stories about victims of trafficking that would, make your jaw drop. It's a real thing, yes.
Yeah, no, I mean, I 100% agree.
Everything you read.
But the thing too is that it's just not. One of the things about it too is that trafficking isn't necessarily what people always think it is. I mean, there's several different kinds of trafficking, and it's not as complex as like movies always make it seem. Like we're smuggling people across state lines. Not saying that doesn't happen. Of course, it absolutely does. But
well, in the ways that people get the ingenious ways that people come up with to capture people are also horrifying. I mean, the how they're going to just scope out someone walking around in the parking lot of a mall and pull them into a van and take them off and traffic them and things like that. If you knew the details of how those things happen, it would really freak you out. I mean, it happens. Yeah, it's disturbing.
All right, so we should be fixed, but we'll see.
And not all, and then of course, don't forget, Josh, that not all the victims are adults. Obviously, there are also children that are trafficked, which is horrifying.
Completely. All right, here we go. Let's test it out. Hopefully, you can.
That was a trip. Oh, I heard something.
Let's go.
Caller, you're on the air.
Hello.
Oh.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, I kind of hear someone. It sounds like a mosquito inside of the Tin Man.
Yeah.
Hello.
Josh, I was waiting for 781. You're on the air.
Yeah, 781. You're on the air. Can you hear me?
Yes, it's Miss Karen from Boston.
Hi, how are you?
And I'm great. How are you? I love this concept.
She called us before, right, Josh?
She's called before, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God! Don't tell them how much I do call again. Okay, I am curious about his take on letting the Menendez brothers out and the new movement.
Oh,
who let them out?
That is a great question. Dr. Gary, did you catch that?
I think it's time.
Well, don't forget my research partner pretty much every day, right? That I communicate with almost every day. Dr. Ann Burgess, who is on the foundation with me, the Cold Case Foundation with me, and Chris McDonough and some other people you may know, who's in Super Sleuths with me, etc. She wrote the afterword for the New Evil. She was part of the defense for the Menendez brothers. If you go online, you can see the footage. And I talked to her with great frequency, about, in fact, we're writing as we speak about the comparisons between the Lizzie Borden case of 1893, the trial was 1893, and the Menendez case, which the trial started exactly 100 years later, and they were both trials of the century, and they have a lot more in common than you would think on the surface. Now, to answer this question, and I was just discussing this with her, You have to think of the scale that Michael and I talk about in The New Evil. This is the same thing that happened with Lizzie Borden. You have to ask yourself, is this a person who is killing to escape a traumatic and desperate situation, in which case we'd expect the individual to never do it again, like a person who kills where you might even have sympathy because they're killing the person, traumatizing them or whatever? Or, not that it makes it okay, but it's a more human motive, right? And those kind of people tend to never do it again. And then, or are they someone who is an elimination murderer, something I frequently talk about, right? Where the idea would be to kill someone because you want their money, which is exactly the same dilemma you wound up with Lizzie Borden, who, by the way, there's no question in my mind, killed her stepmother and father. I don't even understand how anybody questions it. It's almost funny. Of course she did it. But in the Menendez brothers case, the question for me really is, was it about money or was it about abuse? And if it was about money, then you're dealing with a kind of elimination murder where the idea would be that the abuse story would be like a cover story that was used to create sympathy. If they really were abused, that's very different, and that is worth revisiting. Now, I was just saying to Anne that this is a really good example of a case where the fact that the potential victims of the SA were male had a great effect on the public perception. If they had been female, the public might have been more inclined to think that it was realistic, because males that are abused in that way, there is a tendency to kind of not get how frequent that is, that it's not improbable that there will be incestuous abuse of males in that situation. Now, my problem with that case is they didn't need to kill to get the money. In the Borden case, she had, there was no way out because you weren't allowed to move out of the house of your parents if you weren't married, and the father was completely stingy, even though he's one of the wealthiest people in the entire city, in Spindle City there in Fall River. In the case of the Menendezes, they didn't need to do that. It wasn't necessary. They were living in wealth already. The notion that the motive was to get the money is very odd, which then leaves the question of why'd they do it and why with such passion. When you commit an elimination murder, it's very tidy and fast. Your goal is to get the person out of the way. They don't necessarily have to suffer. You don't have any ill will towards them. You just want them gone. Take a gun, you kill them, it's over. The way that they were killed was suggestive of pent-up emotion, anger, resentment, where you are basically trying to level the playing field by exploding your emotion onto the person. It's gruesome, it's brutal, it's above the neck, explosive rage, the head blown off, clear off the neck, mutilated, whatever. And I'm more inclined to think that the emotionality there is consistent with with people who may have authentically been abused. And so I have to tell you that I can't tell. There's not enough evidence. I don't know one way or the other. But if there was authentic abuse and that can be substantiated, it then raises the question of whether the Menendez brothers were people that have kind of done their time and already had their lives taken from them before they even went to prison. You see what I'm saying? So, but I think for me, rather than pronounce judgment, I would simply say, I don't know. But if it turns out that there's authentic abuse, my take would be that those are people who it would be improbable for them to ever do anything like that again. And it might be worthwhile considering, look at Susan Smith. Susan Smith was a flat out elimination murderer who killed her children to get them out of the way so she could have a romance. She's up for parole. She's gonna be paroled potentially, right? And there isn't even any question of abuse. Well, she was abused, but not by the people she killed, right? So I think there is something to this notion of, and I think some states are changing their laws to pick up on this, that if someone is a victim of abuse and kills in that context, it may mitigate in some way the question of sentence. And I won't say one way or the other because there is no clear evidence to me one way or the other at this juncture. I'm waiting to see if what can be substantiated.
That answer?
The doctor, I can't remember from the doctor. did she think they had been on some level?
Sorry, say that again.
Did Dr. Burgess believe on some level they had been? I think from the documentary, I can't remember.
Well, she certainly testified as to what she had been told. I mean, that we know what she testified. I'm not gonna say what she says in private, but it's her business. But I mean, it's pretty clear that they were talking about it. I mean, watch the testimony. I mean, it's online. You can find it on YouTube. You can see her testifying to what they told her.
Yeah, I watched a lot of it.
I am fascinated by the drawing she had. Was it Eric doing the drawings? That was brilliant. I mean, what they do with younger kids.
Techniques like that. Yeah, she's wonderful with that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot in the documentary, actually, the part she did, like revisiting it, the latest one on Netflix. So that's why I was curious about it. But thank you for your opinion.
Oh, and let me just address something that's in the chat. So one of the things somebody has raised, because people do know the Lizzie Borden case, and one day we have to have a long chat about it. But remember, Sweet Country, who's bringing this up, that story about the disgruntled employee has no substantiation whatsoever. The person who told that story was Lizzie. She went the day before the murders to see her friend and told her friend about a disgruntled man because she was creating the cover story for what was going to be the murder. So the idea is, like, if I know that I'm going to commit a crime and I go the day before, with tears in my eyes and tell a friend, oh, there's this strange man who's mad at so-and-so, and then so-and-so turns up dead. The point is for the friend to be able to go into a courtroom and say, but the night before, she came and told me that this disgruntled man was mad at dad, that kind of thing. But the person didn't exist. That's more proof, in my opinion, of a schemer who came up with a cover story. And incidentally, she didn't shed one tear until they freed her. Not one tear, even when they came in the room, and she was in the room with those bodies for hours and hours while they were being autopsied and everything else. She didn't shed one tear, not even when she was questioned by police. Believe me, she was guilty.
The Lizzie Borden case is just absolutely
guilty. But what's more interesting is why she got away with it. Now, moving along. Mm-hmm.
So I had to change the number. Hopefully the line connection's better now. 707-677-8264 is the number to call. And I don't think that there's a queue. So if you call, we'll answer your call as it comes in. The Menendez brothers, really quick. Yeah, I have mixed emotions and mixed feelings about them because, I mean, a lot of people go through a lot of horrible things in life and don't go to those extremes either,
Of course not.
And murder, to me, murder is murder, but I get that there are mitigating like circumstances and things like that, but
murder is not murder. That's precisely the point of the new evil. If you are a person who kills out of sheer emotion under pressure, you are very different than a person who plots and schemes and doesn't even kill a person quickly, but draws it out and tortures them and assaults them because they're playing out a fantasy. There is no comparison between that. There are people who kill in self-defense. There are people who kill out of jealousy without thinking it through. There are people that kill impulsively because they're angry, and they're lower on the scale and very unlikely to ever do it again.
Gary?
No. I'm not talking about premeditated. I'm talking about emotional, impulsive murder.
But that's what they did.
Then that's different. Once you get into premeditated, and then you start thinking, what was the motive? There's a different degree of calculus. The person is crueler and more sadistic and playing it out, and you don't need to have an immediate cause. The person could just kill for fun, or because they like outsmarting you, because they're essaying you, because they're torturing you. There's no comparison. You're talking about, in these kind of situations, we're talking about people who, even if they impulsively did it, there was a little bit of planning. It's a little bit of cold-bloodedness, right? Because, sure. I mean, even if they were killing out of abuse, they had to plot it a little bit. So there's a little bit of that. but it's different than to say, they did it because they just wanted the money. There's something that's like altering their judgment a little bit and making them emotionally upset. That's a little different. So you have to understand that there's a difference between a person operating under duress and a person who's committing murder because it's a fantasy or a pleasure to do it. I mean, they're at two different ends of a scale, and those are the people that are going to reoffend. The psychopath, the narcissist, the sadist, the person where it's in their personality. I mean, of course, Ted Bundy, to answer the audience, of course, Ted Bundy's motivation was to dominate and control and through SA. And that's the kind of person who would never stop. That's very different than a person who says, I had a fight in a bar and I picked something up and stabbed the guy who made fun of my mother. There's no comparison. So in that sense, murder is not murder. But I know what you mean. I know exactly.
I mean, I just think in their case, although, like I said, I don't know. A lot of people really do want them. A lot of people want them out of jail, man. I mean, or out of prison, and I can see why, if you're listening to what their reasonings were, although the judge did say, you can't use, you're not allowed to use that, which I found interesting. But
some countries recognize the notion of a crime of passion, right? In France, the crime passionnel, the idea being that, the person in a moment of kind of emotional chaos acts out. But there are what look like crimes of passion that are plotted. Cruelly, and that's very different.
Right. Once again, the number is 707-677-8264. Okay. Go ahead. You're on the air. Hi, how's it going? How are you? Fine, thank you.
I don't hear them. You're talking to Captain Howdy again?
Wow, really? We really can't hear the caller.
No.
This is wild. I have never had these problems.
It's all right. Just quote them. Try to imitate their voice. Bring it to life.
No, I'm good. Thank you, though. I'm not very good at that. Okay, hold on.
Grammy B is doing a Van Gogh impersonation.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. Let me try this again.
She got it.
Thank you for calling. That was an invalid number. Please re-enter your show or meeting number, followed by the pound key. Enter your 6-digit PIN number.
Sounds like movie phone.
It is.
Welcome to movie phone.
It's the same exact thing.
That was an That was an invalid PIN for FFF. Please
It's just a struggle city, dude.
Maybe somebody could ask us something in the audience while we wait.
Thank you for calling.
Probably. Hold on.
Enter your 6-digit PIN number.
We're gonna get
reading the questions to see if anything comes up that we can touch on while we're waiting, but this is pretty funny stuff.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's hilarious. Busting a gut here.
That was an invalid.
They're gonna make me.
That was an invalid PIN for FFF. Please re-enter your 6-digit PIN. If you think you have reached
99884.
I'm sorry, that is not a valid PIN number.
Can you hear this?
Unfortunately.
This is so stupid.
Thank you.
Hold on. I thought I had it all worked out. Thought everything was going to go super smooth.
Interesting questions in the chat. I'm just not really sure which one to address.
Calling Call-In Studios host and call screener line. Please enter your
anything. Anything is better than what's happening.
PIN number.
I'm allowing the awkwardness to build because it's hilarious.
Yeah, it's great. I'm loving it.
In all seriousness, somebody asked about.
You are now in the host room and can manage your callers from the Call-In Studio web interface.
Great.
Conspiracy, Josh.
Say that again.
I was just about to answer a question, and then we got in. I don't discuss Delphi anymore.
Oh, you don't?
No, I was very clear that I don't believe what I feel about Richard Allen being a problematic suspect. And then I feel that is a case in which there is a world of people that are just a little too Lord of the Flies for my taste. And I don't like to be caught up in that. You know what I mean? There are certain cases that bring out the Lord of the Flies in people. And I'm not interested. I won't do it.
Skoberger, one of those cases.
But he's a, to me, he's a, yeah, I think he's a problematic suspect. And I've been very clear about that. So that's all I'll say.
Caller, go ahead. You're on the air. Where are you
I can hear you good.
Can you hear us?
Who is this?
I don't know.
Yes, I can. I can hear Gary too.
Oh, hello. How are you?
The wrong number is on your scroll, right?
No, it's the right one.
You have 2 numbers on your scroll. Yeah. Okay.
Who's calling?
I have a question about. Can you hear me?
Yep.
What's your name, please?
I have a question about. Oh, my name is Kate.
Hi, Kate. With a C or a K?
I have a question about with a K.
Okay, Kate with a K. Go ahead.
I have a question about the increase in murders where females actually dismember their victims, and the increase in that.
Like strabismus?
Yeah. Taylor shit business, yes.
Well, first of all, if you were to look up the word dismemberment, you'll see that Ann Burgess and Michael Stone and I created the current definition or proposed criteria for a definition to distinguish it from mutilation, because those words were interchangeable in the literature. In fact, we did that for the New Evil, and then it caught on a little bit, and then we did some real, articles. Ann and I worked with Victor Petrarca and other people at Boston College to study that phenomenon. So I can answer this question for you. And the distinction between dismemberment and mutilation, which you can read about in even Wikipedia with our definition, is that dismemberment means the destruction or removal of one of the large sections of the body: the head, the torso, the arms, the hand, the pelvis, the legs, or the feet. But any smaller part of those large parts is mutilated, not dismembered. So if a person is decapitated, that's dismemberment. But if the eye is destroyed, that is mutilation. If a hand is cut off, it's dismemberment. But if the finger is cut off, it's mutilation. If a person is castrated, it's mutilation. You understand? The smaller parts are mutilated, the larger parts are dismembered. And this is very important because there's a difference in motive between those who mutilate and those who dismember. So the definition matters. Most of the time when people dismember, it used to be thought of as a disorganized thing to do. If you saw like the Black Dahlia, laying in the field, you might say, wow, what a maniac. But the truth of the matter is that the dismemberment of a body usually done defensively to try to take the body and make it into small parts and hide it or get rid of it. And mutilation can be disorganized and chaotic, and indication of a diseased brain or drugs or something like that, because it's so extra. There are some forms of mutilation that are done defensively, like cutting off a tattoo, taking out teeth, removing eyes, anything that could help identify a person. Now, when men and women dismember and mutilate, it tends to be for different reasons. Women, when you see mutilation, for example, or dismemberment, it usually is an indication that there has been an extreme emotionality that has made the person engage in that kind of butchery. With the males, you think, no, this is more to get away with something. I have killed, assaulted a person, and I get rid of their body. So you start, you want to understand that there's also a lot of work and a lot of physicality involved in dismemberment. It's very unusual to do. A person has to do a lot of research to learn how to do it. It's not that easy. You have to learn what tools to use and which body parts and where to do it and all that. And it's not something that a person just kind of does on the fly. It's done with a little planning and organization, and it's hard labor, and you have to then carry the parts and hide them and all that kind of thing. Well, so with women, you see a lot more of like a frenzied mutilation that has to do with the typical reasons why a female would be more likely to commit a murder, which is more likely to involve an intimate, more likely to involve a conflict with that individual. Drug use, psychosis, that kind of thing. So there's a lot more of this kind of frenzied butchery. And in the case of the Symbolism case, which I've spoken about on Court TV and other places, I believed that, first of all, questions have been raised about whether she had any abuse history. That's unclear. But I personally think that whatever was going on with her, she certainly knew the difference between right and wrong. But there were a lot of drugs in her. She had something going on that made her do things that were kind of psychotic-like, laughing inappropriately, sheer butchery of the body, engaging in necrophilic activity, chuckling in the courtroom, making weird faces. Something was actually going on with her there. I don't think that in that particular case you want to think of her as like sheer evil monster. I think she was, she did terrible thing. But I think she was a little under the influence of something and a little bit kind of psychotic. But that didn't mean that she didn't know the difference between right and wrong. And so you saw this kind of disorganized butchery kind of thing going on. But she was very strange. That is very different than a handful of cases you can find where a very cool-headed female killer, does engage in butchery of a body in a very calm way, almost like a serial killer might do or something. But they're rare as hen's teeth. Usually not going to happen. And somebody, for example, asked about the Knight case, and I think that's a good example of someone who, in an act of kind of revenge and cruelty, engaged in extreme mutilation of a male. But anyway, it's a really good question. We are seeing an increase in crimes like that being committed by females as we move along kind of in history. There's a kind of change in terms of that. It used to be all males that did this stuff with a couple of exceptions. Prior to the 1960s, who could you name? What female could you name who engaged in extreme brutality towards other people? Elspeth Bathory, a couple of people like Jane Toppin engaging in poisoning and an essay of her victims. There aren't that many. Now they're increasing, and I think that's a cultural phenomenon. There are people asking about castration. That is something I've studied with Anne. We haven't published our results yet, but the main reason why women engage in castration, removal of the testicles, the penis, or both, is usually previous abuse or infidelity. But when men do it, it's usually either psychosis or sexual pleasure caused by the mutilation of the genitals.
Very good.
Any other? Well, somebody asked, Josh.
No, I didn't say. Yeah, no, of course.
Very good, young man. You did ask. Do you like the complete calmness with which we discuss these things? I mean, they asked.
They asked. You answer. 479. You're on the air.
Uh-oh, Captain Howdy again.
Why do you think we're seeing more dismemberment cases, if we are?
Yeah.
Or is it just media?
No, it's simple. Because the technology is getting so good to catch people more quickly through even the tiniest bits of a body, you could figure out who a victim is and who killed them. What you're seeing is more and more and more butchery of the body to try to eliminate the evidence. So, like for example, I was on a call with some colleagues a couple of years ago, and I said I predict that what you're going to start to see is a lot more burning of bodies. And the jury is out still on if I'm going to be right about that. But of course, the point is, if you completely eliminate the body, then it becomes really hard to tell who they are and therefore who killed them. So that I think the reason you're seeing more has to do with the technology getting good. Michael Stone used to make a pun. He was always making puns, some of which were a little off color. But he used to say that race against between law enforcement and offenders should be called the arms race, because it's like dismembering to try to outpace the technology. So he playfully called it the arms race, in a little nod to the Cold War and the whole. But I know what he means. I know what he meant. That there was there's a race against the technology. That's why the number of serial killers is dropping, because they're getting caught after the first killing. So you would expect to see an increase.
So it doesn't have.
Yeah, go ahead.
It doesn't have so much to do with any sort of psychology shift or tolerance of gruesome things, that we're more used to it or anything like that.
It may, but I think I'm sure that there's something to that too. But because there is definitely a kind of deterioration of the braking system that we would see in people. I think the way I would think of it is like this: the kind of crime where you would want to eliminate the body and not get caught because you don't have any guilt and you want to do it again is increasing for cultural reasons. That's how I would think about it. Like the kind of horrendous offenses where you would want to dismember is increasing for cultural reasons, but you're doing the butchery to outpace technology in a time when you're more likely to get caught. Does that make sense?
That's how. Perfect sense. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's a great question.
Thank you so much for your call.
That was a really good question. Boy, are we getting into some dark territory today, aren't we?
It's close to Halloween, Dr. Gary. You know how it is. And 817-799-8214 is the actual number now to call after the fifth time. I think that we're locked in now, solid, ready to go. A good 47 minutes into the show. No problems whatsoever. Let's see here. 571.
There you go. Hey.
571. You're on the air.
Okay. Who's this?
Yeah, you got me.
Male, isn't it? Is this our first male ever? Or maybe Sebastian Rogers?
Yeah. No.
That was the only other male, I think, as well.
Oh, yeah.
I got my...
Yeah.
What's your name? Where you calling from?
I shouldn't have an echo. Hey, Lab, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Oh, I'm all right. I'm watching your show.
Good.
I would assume. I would
Dr.
assume.
Gary.
How are you? What's your? What is the name of the caller?
I don't know. He won't tell me.
Oh, yeah. Lab. I guess the Lab would know me as Cat Randall.
Cat Randall. Yes, Cat Randall. I know who Cat Randall is. Yeah. How's it going, man?
All right. Yeah. So I'm watching your show and I'm like, all right. It's there was a turn there with the dismemberment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, and the Ashley, what was that? Not Ashley. The Bobbitt woman, Lorena Bobbitt and John Wayne Bobbitt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was a castration case, not a dismemberment case.
Well, the member like left his body, right?
Right, but that's mutilation because it's the smaller part. It's what I was trying to say earlier, and forgive me, and this is going to sound like a bad pun, but I'm sorry I cut you off. But what I'm trying to say is that the removal of a penis would be a form of mutilation. If the entire pelvis were removed, that would be dismemberment. So the technical term for the castration of the penis by Lorena Bobbitt would be mutilation. What makes that tricky is that the penis is sometimes called a member. So the word dismember almost sounds like perfect for describing the removal of a member, but it's the wrong word. It actually is a mutilation. But anyway, so please, so are you interested in that case? It's quite a fascinating one, actually.
Yeah, it was. That was one of the first ones that actually got me into like looking at crime cases and whatnot. So one I'm interested in now. So I live in Northern Virginia, and so we got this case with this lady. She was a hoarder of animals.
Yes, I think I know that.
And yeah, so she had 19 dogs, 19 dogs, 6 cats, and it's like, how did she get away with that? And for so long, but now they brought a case against her. It's coming up in December, and I'm kind of like trying to follow it. And yeah, so when we go to the dark and twisted kind of things, I do get into dark and twisted. But I try to keep a levity at the same time.
Yeah.
Is there anybody that can like say, hey, how do you keep your levity while you still watch this stuff?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, it's actually what I'm tackling in the opening chapter of the book I'm writing. That's why the proposed title I have for it is Traveler in the Darkness, because there's a very big difference between traveling in the darkness and becoming the darkness. And that's what I was talking about in the beginning when I said you've got to be like the eye of a hurricane. Like it doesn't affect the eye. In the center has to be a person at peace. The reason that you go into the dark, what would you say? The hullabaloo. Right. The reason that you go into the darkness is only to understand it. It's like the Jungian shadow. You go into it to understand it, and then it's not scary anymore because you've conquered it. And the idea is, I'm not afraid of those things. I go into them because I want to help understand them. And I think to get to the truth of something, you have to look at all of its ugliness, right? I mean, I'll tell you, if you ever fall in love, you'll love a person when they're in the bloom of their life, but you'll never love them more than when you get to the end of life and they're dying and ill and the bloom has fallen out of them, because then you see all the truth of them that is underneath the beauty. And, there's something about truth that is very painful for a lot of people. That's how I think you have to be somebody who is not afraid of truth. If you are afraid of the truth, you'll live, kind of with your head in the sand, or you'll distract yourself, and you can get through life that way. But I think, the unexamined life is not worth living, to quote, a great mind. But I think even the fact that you're here and that you're interested in this stuff shows that, you have a kind of an interest in getting to the truth of the darkest aspects of everything, right? That human beings are not all light all the time. And every one of us has the capacity for terrible things and great things. It's really interesting. What I find fascinating are people that do evil things, but also do kind things, and people that do kind things who turn out to be secretly doing evil things, because we don't like to think that people are that mixed. We like to think that, the serial killer is killing all day long and, it gives off vibes of evil from across the room. But what's far scarier about them is that they can actually be quite kind and loved by certain people and likable and funny, and then in the dead of night be going out committing atrocious acts. That's harder to understand. And that's what I'm interested in that kind of weird mixture, as Michael Stone used to say, the tightrope between Buddha and Bundy that we all walk is very interesting to me. And now, regarding that case, I think you're talking about a case that was in Middleburg, right?
Yep, the lady out of Middleburg.
The one who had all the, oh Lord, I'm trying to remember the article. She basically was like, she didn't have a kennel license, but she had all these living in the home.
let me stop for a second.
Yeah.
If you're asking Seth any questions about any sort of lawsuits in the chat, you're just going to get blocked. I'm not having that. It's ridiculous. I've seen a couple already, and I don't want it here. Grind your axe somewhere else. Just leave. I'm not going to put up with it. Like, it really pisses me off.
You mean Seth is in the chat and people are doing
it? It's completely inappropriate. So, mods, if you guys are here, I don't know. I'm sure we have some. We'll just boot them out. We're doing a show that has nothing to do with any of that.
Well, you know, Josh, years ago, there was a very, very great televangelist who was probably going to become a saint called Fulton Sheen. I loved him very much. In fact, I mentioned him in the acknowledgments of the New Evil as a great influence on me when I was in seminary and elsewhere. And there was a story told about him where he was out one day with his niece, and they passed a homeless man, and the homeless man wanted $1, and he gave him $1. And the niece said, "Why did you do that? How do you know he isn't a drug addict or an alcoholic? How do you know he isn't a liar?" And Fulton Sheen said, "That's not a chance I could take." Meaning that if the person really was homeless and he passed him by, he would have done a terrible thing. Well, that's the same way I feel when you have a person who may very well be a completely innocent person who's dealing with the loss of their child. It's not a chance that you could take. That might be true. You don't say something hurtful to a person because you have an opinion and take the chance that you're hurting that person's heart. It's not fair. See? So I just say, my attitude is to say, it's not my business. Let that sort itself out. Get it? Not because how do we know? Anyway, so now very interesting call. Yeah, your call is extremely interesting. Are you asking about why a person might hoard animals?
No, it's just the humanity of things. But Lab, you know, I'm not a fan of the deep dark content that when I'm watching, I'm like, yeah, it's too dark, man. But as long as there are people here with a little bit of levity, and I like to hear that you do have the levity, Doctor.
I try to be because
I'll keep doing
I really try to be because I agree with you that I have found in the weirdest way that people in the true crime world that I've known, and I don't mean that listen, they're a mixed bag. There's a lot of phony balonies out there, but I mean truly credentialed people who really know what they're doing that I've worked with over the years. They are among the lightest and brightest people I've ever known. I think there's something about spending a lot of time in the dark that brings out the brightest parts of people. It's just a strange thing. I mean, it's like it puts into perspective.
Right. Are you having a bad day? Maybe he's having a bad day. Those are the thoughts that go through your mind. And if you just open the door for that person and they're like, "Oh, well, hey, thanks." Yeah, it's like that kind
what
of
do you
thing.
mean?
I like that. What
do you mean you don't like my dark? What do you mean you don't like my dark subject matter? I know all the trials that you watch.
What is he? No. Josh is not a dark person. Look at his room.
He's talking about the subject matter.
I know I'm being sarcastic, but there, I can tell you there is a great brightness to Josh. But I think in fairness, it's a very hard line to toe, because what happens sometimes is that if there's too much levity, it can hurt people in the audience too. It's really hard because there are people that come to shows like this because they themselves have been hurt, and it really breaks their heart to watch people kind of cracking jokes and whatever. But I also think you're 100% right. There is a kind of a sweetness to your spirit that comes out as soon as you talk. I can see that there's a warmth in you. And
there has to be. I mean, we have to have balance, right? We have to find a balance. You can't just spend life.
Yeah,
I did that for years. I did it in years. Darkness.
I used to dislike Cat Randall a lot, but I like him now.
Oh, he seems very
just like.
Yeah, I think we used to argue about stuff, but he's good people, and
I think he's got a warmth to him, and I can tell you that in my experience, the smartest people I've ever known talk a lot about balance. I think that balance is the key to everything, when it comes to humanity and so forth. And there is something about, like, for example, I really believe that if you look at a person who's unhappy, it's probably because if you lay out all the individual values in a person's life, one of those values is getting ignored because some other one is taking over. It's a loss of balance that leads to unhappiness and unfulfillment. Or in a relationship with another person, if the balance gets thrown off, it can be, and that's why I always thought it was so interesting, if you ever watch Hitchcock movies, how many of them involve balance. People on ladders, people falling off roofs, people with vertigo, people with whatever, because they were really toying with the idea that losing one's mind was about losing the balance between the goodness and the evil that's within a person. And you're 100% right. It's a balancing act. There's a great wisdom to realizing that. And so I appreciate that. I think
I'm glad y'all didn't. I'm glad y'all didn't kill me for coming in and talking and calling in, giving my
Why would anybody kill you for that? That's beautiful.
Because we're morbid.
Well, because I'm too humorous. I look at I've heard it before, and when it's too dark for many people, they can't hear, or not hear, maybe sense or feel or see.
Chad and I have had an encounter or two over the last couple of months, but he's a really great guy, and he is right. He does have a sense of humor about stuff. And by the way, I do understand, because there are sometimes, like, we get so caught up in like Dateline, First 48, doing true crime shows, reading Dr. Gary's book, all that kind of stuff, that there does have to be a balance. And then there's just sometimes where there are some days where it's just like, I don't even want to hear about it. Like, I don't want to talk about it. It's sometimes it can be overbearing, and that's why you do have to have a balance. I mean, if you just take all of it in constantly, it can be too much. There's no question about it.
Yeah, I'll be your resident goofball. If you let me call in every now and then, I'll be your goofball. Well, all right?
I won't. Yeah, I won't block your number.
All right.
Kat.
You got a great show, and
yeah, you sound like a kind person to me.
Good night.
Thanks, Kat. Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it's funny because I've actually he's been on a panel that I've been on another show, and let's just say we had a misunderstanding.
So
it worked out just fine.
Well, I think compromise and balance are very linked, and compromise makes it possible to love.
I agree. And we worked it out just fine. Go ahead. You're on the air.
Hey, Josh, this is Kate again.
Hi.
Same Kate? Kate with a K?
Kate with a K.
I wanted to...
Oh, hi. Deja vu. Yeah.
I heard a comment about hoarders before.
Uh-huh.
From the other caller.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to ask about the opposite of that, when it feels like you get the same kind of gratification by throwing things away.
Mm. Interesting. You mean that the person who...
So someone's parent was a hoarder, and then their children just want to throw things away.
Well, I think that and I'm speaking generally, I can't analyze a particular person, but I would say that they're both different sides of the same coin, which is control. If it doesn't matter if in one case the person is throwing things away and the other is is collecting them. It's sort of like the way that being overly attached and under attached often happen in the same person. So a person will say, oh, 1 minute I was completely obsessed with this person, and then when they showed interest in me, I lost all interest and never wanted to talk to them again. That kind of anxious, avoidant kind of thing is the same thing that can happen to people with objects. You could obsessively collect them, and I'm a collector of all kinds of things. I find it extremely intellectually stimulating to collect. That's because I'm very interested in things that other people think have no value. That's true of how I feel about people too. I'm interested in the things that, like, you would go to a antique shop and a person would be like, oh, that's just a piece of junk, and it'd be like, actually it's worth like $40,000. Like that kind of. I like being the person who knows the value of what other people think is garbage. But I also understand the joy of minimalism and getting rid of things. The truth of the matter is that they're the same process, in my opinion, and it's about trying to assert a sense of control over the environment. And and what people do with objects is often a giveaway of how they wish the people were in their lives. I wish that I had control over pulling together everybody to be around me all the time when I wanted them around me. I wish I was the person who dictated when they were not in my life, because this way I don't feel abandoned. So I take control and I get rid of them, that kind of thing. But it's sort of a series of techniques that are used that seem to me to have to do with attachment through objects. And it's an extremely interesting thing. Now, of course, that's a very psychoanalytic answer. There are also some people who collect and throw things away compulsively, but there's a biological component to it, an honest-to-God biological condition that's treatable and things like that. So I think that probably the truth of these kinds of attachments to objects or detachment from objects can have a lot to do with biology, and it can have a lot to do with psychology. But I think I am learning as the years go on that there's more joy in giving everything away, right, than there is in receiving things. I think Bunyan said in Pilgrim's Progress, a man there was, though some did think him mad, the more he gave away, the more he had. Well, moving along.
And like in this comment on the screen right here, my husband grew up with very little as an adult. And as an adult, always wants to buy 3 of something, so he never runs out.
Yeah, my kind of people. I get it. I've been like that in my lifetime too. I really understand that. But if you think about it, there's a symbolism to objects. They seem very related to control and fear of loss and detachment. And read Elizabeth Bishop's poem about the art of losing. It's a great poem.
All right.
Anything else?
So
thank you so much, Dr. Gary. Thank you, Josh.
I love that you liked the first call so much you had to call a second time. Talk to you in 5 minutes.
I know.
862, you're on the air. Where are you calling from? What's your name?
Want to throw us away, Josh. She's attached to us. She likes it. Moving along.
862, you're on the air.
Oh, hi. How are you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. What a beautiful dog that is.
It's Jen from Jersey again.
Jen
hi.
Hey, guys. So, Dr. Gary, you mentioned a couple shows ago about, and Josh just mentioned that we're closer to Halloween. But Dr. Gary, you mentioned patients and regular people in your life bringing up stories of loved ones coming to them in their dreams.
Yes. Right.
And,
just to be clear, so the audience knows what you're talking about, I was talking about how I don't know if that happens for psychological reasons, because it's the person's brain's way of kind of saying it's okay to let go, or if it happens for spiritual reasons. But I have heard both. I've heard both versions of that. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was so interested in that because I don't know if you guys remember when I called you the first time. I mentioned my boyfriend was
murdered.
like 6.5 years ago. And
I've been
it's
thinking
been
about
6.5 years, and
yes. Uh-huh.
I dream about him literally at least 4 times a week.
Oh.
And it's not always, he's not talking to me. He could just be in the background. You know, it's never really like a sad dream or anything, you know? But
Yeah.
I was just wondering why, you know, like I just want it to stop kind of. Because I wake up upset sometimes.
Well, let me put it to you this way. If it were a spiritual thing, and you really thought that he was coming to you that way because he really is out there, you know, thinking of you and wants to be, then you could just ask him to stop. If it was a psychological thing, then I ask myself, why does my brain not make this stop? It could be that it's, you know, I mean, you want to look into it. I don't want to diagnose a person who I haven't met, but there are different reasons that could happen to a person. They could be, you know, traumatized, or they could, you know, feel guilty, or they could, you know, there's all kinds of reasons, but that's something to sort out in your own life. But if you believe it's coming from outside yourself, that it's a spiritual thing, then just say, if you love me, I'd like you to stop, you know, because I would like some peace. But, and he would listen. But so I think that either way, you know, that's how I would think about it, is to think about it spiritually. There's one way you'd handle it. And if it's a psychological thing, think about why it keeps coming to you, and then do what you have to do to sort of allow it to migrate into the past, which is to accept it, or think about, make meaning out of it, or etc. It's a process, you know. But people that are going through mourning and that are dealing with death are very special to me, because they are people who have drawn very close to the curtain that separates life and death. You know, people forget they forget the word apocalypse, which, if you were to ask most people, they would say it means the end of the world. The word apocalypse literally means, if you translate it, the pulling away of a curtain. And what it really means is that one day the curtain will get pulled away and we'll understand everything that's been going on behind the curtain all along. It won't have to be translated through dreams and symbols and drawing.
And just another
yeah, right. You'll just see it for what it is.
Sorry to cut you off. Just another, just weird. It's not weird, but
it's nothing weird about what you're talking about.
Not even strange, but and in a lot of the dreams, I'm always I'm looking for him.
Yeah.
I mean,
you know what I mean? I'm just like, where are you?
There's got to be some symbolism.
Go ahead, Josh. Go ahead, Josh.
Well, there's got to be some sort of symbolism in there, you know, somewhere. I mean, dreams, you know, I've had dreams that were so real, or that felt so real. You know, when you wake up, it takes you a while to even get your bearings. And you're like, God, I can't believe that was a dream. It felt extremely real. And I think that, I think that when you're thinking, I mean, I'm sure that you think about them a lot, correct?
Yeah. Every day.
Right. And I mean, that's going to seep in, you know, even to, you know, your brain as it shuts off, and as you go to sleep, you know, you're gonna think about the people that you love and the people that you lost. And I know it's frustrating, because, you know, I've had that stuff happen too, where, you know, somebody that you lost, you feel like they're alive again, and then you wake up, and
right,
it's like it's like being awake is the bad dream, but being you know, having a dream is like beautiful. And so I get
right. Yeah. Right. Go ahead, Josh. It's just that you went in and out for a second on the mic. I didn't know if you were.
Oh no.
I think that for some people,
I think I'm just saying for myself that I think, because we don't know what happens when people pass, right? No one knows. So I feel like maybe that's why in my dreams I'm like, where are you? Or I'm looking for him.
Right.
One of my last streams, like
the
other day, I'm like, did you see my mom? Because my mom passed 18 years ago.
Oh, I see.
So I think it's because I don't know. I was just like, what? I was just trying to be like, why am I keep asking where he is or looking for him or looking for my mom? And I guess I just came to the conclusion that I guess because no one knows,
Right.
I'm
sorry that the peace of sleep has been taken from you. That's a terrible thing when sleep becomes worse than, being awake. For most people, sleep is when they slip away. You remember years ago that movie based on the famous book, of course, Journey to the Center of the Earth. I think it came out in 1959, the movie, if I'm not mistaken. And there's a line in it that says, "I don't sleep. I hate those little slices of death." Right, the idea being, which, by the way, got misquoted supposedly by Poe in the opening of A Nightmare on Elm Street. That is not a Poe quote. That's a distortion of a line from Journey to the Center of the Earth. But I think it's interesting, the for you to explore the question of what the point is, like what. Let me put it this way: either because he's really out there trying to tell you something, or because psychologically he wants to tell you something as a kind of symbolic, archetypical figure in your personal mind, in your personal mythology, whatever. Either way, you just have to say, what do you want? What do you need? Right? And that's really what you know. What do you, ask yourself, what do you want to know from him? What is it that you want from him?
Right.
Do you know?
I think it's, I literally think it is, where are you?
You don't know where he is?
Because that's what I'm asking. Yeah, no. Because no one, we don't know what happens after people pass.
No, it's a matter of faith.
And I did say, and I did say, did you see my mom? And he said it doesn't work like that. And I'm like, oh God, what does that mean?
Are you a person of faith, or are you a person of no faith?
I believe in God. I don't go to church or anything like that. I believe in God. I believe we.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
I believe we do go somewhere.
Okay. I've always thought about that, even as a kid. When I was a kid, I used to write short stories about where all the balloons go that people let go of, that kind of go up into the air. I always used to wonder where they went, Yeah. When I was older, I realized they just deflate and wind up in the ocean and kill whales and stuff. But I used to have these very romantic ideas about where
anticlimactic, actually.
Yes, the other day, I remember once I was looking at some old writings that I wrote as a little kid. And it's funny because I wrote like a grown-up as a little kid, and I said I said something like that I was looking for the lost heaven. Wait, what did I say? The heaven where lost balloons converge. I have no idea why I talked like that as a little kid. But the thing is that I think that is so central to my personality. I've been wondering that my whole life. Where do things go? Little kids wonder about stuff like that. I've seen little kids come to therapy and say things like, what happens when I flush things down the toilet? Where do they go? The other day, a kid asked me, where do things go when I spit them into the dentist's, the little, the cuspidor, it's called, the thing you spit into at the dentist's office, called the cuspidor. People don't realize that. But when you spit into the cuspidor, where does it go? Where is that special place where everything goes when it isn't here anymore? Little kids think about things like that. And Freud used to say that there are two great mysteries of life that were basically like doors. They're standing outside the door of your parents' bedroom and wondering what they're doing on the other side of the door. And then there's the door to death. Those are the two great mysteries.
Yeah.
I have never met a child.
What'd you say?
I have never met a child that said, where does my spit go when it goes into the cusp?
That's because you're not a therapist. Little kids think things like that. Where do things go when they die? Where did my parakeet go? Where did my parakeet go when it died? where, you know, when mommy throws things out in the garbage, like, is all the garbage someplace? They think about things like that. It's kind of cute.
You know, it's funny when you're talking about a dream. I have a recurring dream that
Really?
yeah, I would say it's probably I don't know. It's hard to put an exact, but it's often probably once a month, maybe twice sometimes. But with my grandfather,
This, Josh, I promise.
What's that?
Not analyzing this. I'm just going to take it in. Go ahead.
I'm sure that this isn't going down in the manifesto. Josh needs to be committed immediately. But anyway, so when my grandfather was sick and dying, he had dementia and he had Parkinson's, and it was just the whole thing was a mess, you know, but he would always be so upset about being put into a care home. But we weren't putting him into one, you know, but he would always say, please don't put me in a care home. Please don't put me in a care home, you know.
That's so sad.
And I know it was brutal. And because he saw his mom in a care home and she wasn't taken care of very well. And it was really awful. And he got really sick. It was actually the last time he was in the hospital, and he ended up passing away in the hospital. But before that happened, the doctor basically told us, like, you guys don't have much of a choice. He's got to go to a care home. You guys can't take care of him. And we're like, nah, we want to take care of him. They're like, you're going to need a hospital bed, all that kind of stuff, you know? And I was like,
How old were you when you used to have
25 or so. And, anyway, so we were going to get a hospital bed. We were going to do everything that we could, you know, and the doctor just kept saying, you know, it's just not going to, it's not going to work. He's in really bad shape, you know? And anyway, he passed away. He never made it to a care home, which I'm grateful for, but I have dreams that I haven't seen him in so long, and that he's in a care home and that I haven't visited him. And and he died in 2010. And I still have that dream that he's alive, but he's not here, but that he's in a care home somewhere. And it feels very real every time it happens. And it's like different situations, different circumstances. But the fact of the matter is that he's not here. And I would ask, okay, well, where's grandpa? And they say, well, you know, he's in the care home. I was like, man, why is he in a care home? And it probably, after and like I said, it probably happens maybe once a month or so. And after it happens and I wake up, I mean, it really does take me a little bit to kind of work, you know, out of that. I mean, I do. I miss him dearly. And I remember when they told us that he was going to have to go into a care home. I mean, I got nauseous. I ran to the bathroom, you know, and
did he wind up in a care home?
No, he never did. Never did. But it was like his fear has kind of transferred over to my dreams, I guess. It's weird.
What's your interpretation of this story?
Probably that what I think is I feel like that I will see him again. And that my dream is just that, like, I'm just looking for him. Like, he was the only dad that I had, you know? And so it was just a really, I don't know. It was just, I would tell him, I'm not going to put you in a care home. Reed said, you'll be begging to stay out of a care home when you get old, Josh. Well, I'm not denying that. I'm just saying that it was just a very, it was a constant thing with him when he got old. that he was constantly saying, I do not want to go to a care home. Please don't put me in there. Like, I'd rather die than go to a care home and things like that. So, but it's a weird dream that I have.
I don't think it's that weird. It makes sense. Doesn't it make sense to you?
Yeah, I mean, it does. It makes sense, but it's the coming to, when you after, because like some of these dreams, like they're so realistic. It's just so weird,
Well, let me put it to you this way. In order, and I'm just making a statement like a lay person out of curiosity. Don't you think that it's interesting that you probably also shared that one of the worst things that could happen to a person is to lose their home, to lose their family?
Sure.
Okay, so remember, the best way to analyze a dream is to say, maybe all the people in the dream are me. Maybe there's a little part of me that has the same fear he did, that the people that I love around me are going to be taken away and I'll be by myself in a fake home because I won't be in a real one because those people won't be there anymore. I'll be in some like surrogate home where some stranger will take care of me, that kind of thing.
Well,
and
that kind of sort of happened.
Well, I mean, so I'm just saying, I think it's interesting to think about it that way. That's the best way to think about a parable or a fairy tale or whatever. Just think, are all the characters me? If you think of them as you'll draw all the juice out of the story, because the reality is they are all you. They're all archetypes of you and that are in you. And that's why I like to interpret dreams that way. The person who's the enemy, the person who's the central figure, the person who's, introducing conflict. They're all you. And that's what you want to think about. Why is there a little part of me that identifies with the way my grandfather felt? That's how I would interpret that.
Well, I mean, it's a great point. There's no question about it. It's like I said, that those kind of dreams, they don't just happen, just to happen. You know what I mean? I mean, there's something to it. And I mean, I've went over it before. I've talked to a therapist about it before. And,
I think everybody should talk to a therapist. I think everybody should talk to a therapist. I think it's the best thing ever. I am such a huge, huge fan of like mental health awareness and advocating for people to not have any shame about talking to someone. And I just think everyone needs that in their life. It's so helpful to everybody. There's all this stigma about it. I mean, there are probably people in the audience that have that stigma. They were, especially people born in certain cultures, even like in the South of the United States, big stigma about like, you keep everything in the family. You never admit that like Uncle so-and-so had problems and,
Right.
that kind of thing. Everything's a big secret. I think it's very, very important to advocate for people to not be ashamed to go talk to someone. It's a beautiful thing. And just to have a person outside look at the facts and kind of understand them objectively is sometimes so helpful. And then sometimes you get a really brilliant person who just like sheds a light that just like never would have come to you. And you just go, whoa, like mind blown, I can't. And if you get a therapist that stays with you for years and years, I mean, that you almost can't imagine not having them. They become a figure in your life, like a kind of a wise.
Dude, that happened to me too.
Like a Virgil to your Dante, that kind of thing.
There's a lady named Diane Green. She was my counselor since I was, since the court appointed, like the court gave us, a counselor to see, and she specialized, with young children and things like that. And I mean, I saw her up until I was like 20 something, and then she died, and it was just like it was like devastating, dude. It was like great.
Oh, that's interesting. I've had people.
I seem to lose a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You should read the Elizabeth Bishop poem too. I think that, Josh, to be honest with you, I also have lost a lot, and I always think, and I'm sure I've said this before on your show, but I think there's some truth to the Freudian idea that some people become shrinks, some people become doctors to learn the art of losing people, to get close to people and then be not close to them anymore. It's an art, learning how to lose. In fact, I think a lot of people think about life as a sprint, where you have to gather up the most. And I am learning as every year goes on that life is more about reduction. It's about letting go, reducing the ego, being more selfless. The person who loves the most wins. Right? That's the emptiest soul at the end. It's like the Egyptian idea of weighing the heart against the feather. The person most unburdened by attachments and has become the most alone, and is the person most open to, it's like you realize that goodness doesn't come from in you. It's a reflection of something outside of you. So the emptiest person, most loving person, reflects the best. Right? Like a diamond. A diamond doesn't have any light, just reflects light. That's saintly people are just like reflectors. It's like the moon. The moon has no light. It lights up like a bicycle reflector because the sun is shining on it. But the moon has no light. It's not, if you were there, it wouldn't be lit up. It's just dead stone, but it's lit up because the sun is shining, a star is shining on it. Well, that's what goodness is. It's not from in you. The reflection on you. And to do that, you've got to be a little empty, to empty yourself. And that's what I think that I have found life is really about. It's about letting go of everything and becoming the most reflective of that truth. And that's not for everyone. For some people, the meaning of life is, how many TikTok followers do I have? Do I have the latest iPhone? How big is my stack of money? I mean, I don't even understand people like that, but there are people like that in this world. But they're kind of like, I think if you were to read the writings of saintly people and whatever, they're just very young spiritually. They've got a long way to go. And I worry about people like that because in order to break people like that and teach them and make them deeper, life has to do some pretty rough things to people like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because,
I mean,
in loving a person like that, they have to be tested with fire. I think you tempt life to do those kinds of dark things to you when you're a little bit full of the silliness of the world, Yeah.
No, I mean, well, I hope that gives you some, I don't know, insight or helps you in any way.
Oh, I thought it was beautiful that this person has those dreams and is thinking about the meaning of that. And you should also be journaling, to sort the meaning of it out. I would do a lot of writing to put it into a framework to make meaning.
Yeah. I was thinking about doing that.
You definitely should, because that.
Thank you guys so much. I love calling in.
Oh, we love to talk to you, and remember that one day when the conflict has passed and he's at peace in your mind, you'll get a good night's sleep.
Yeah, I believe you will too.
Thank you so much, guys.
You have a good night.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye. A beautiful call. Loved it.
A beautiful call. I love these, Josh. I never get tired of these call-ins, because
870. Yeah, when it's working, it's fantastic. 870, you're on the air.
Hey, Josh. This is Kelly. Hi, Dr. Brucato. This is Kelly. I'm sorry. I've never called in before. I'm really freaking out.
That's all right. Are you on speakerphone?
Am I on what? Speakerphone?
Yeah.
Yeah, should I not be?
Yeah, can you take it off? It'll
Okay, hold on.
for us.
it sounds like when you order a burger at a drive-thru and you're screaming into the clown's mouth, that kind of thing. Like it has that sound,
Never done that before.
Yeah, I'll take a cheeseburger. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah.
Yeah, I do actually.
I'm sorry.
The name is
better now?
Yeah, that's fine.
Do you want fries with that, Kelly?
Yeah. I'd like a large fry and a tea.
Milkshake. Okay.
Unsweetened or sweetened?
No, I'll take a milkshake. Yeah, a chocolate milkshake.
By the way, I have to say this. Hold on one second, Kelly.
Wait.
I have to say that the new Big Mac, the chicken Big Mac is pretty good.
You think so? I saw
just-
someone eating it, like pretty horrified.
No, it was good. I liked it. All right, not that matters.
My daughter tried the Krabby Patty from Wendy's. She loves it.
Mm.
Did you say Krabby Patty?
Yeah,
What's
like
I think I know someone who should be
like
called
SpongeBob SquarePants. You never seen SpongeBob SquarePants?
Oh, yeah, but there's a meal called
Who lives in a pineapple under the sea? SpongeBob SquarePants.
SpongeBob.
I hope this is enough levity for
I had that.
Yeah, you enjoying yourself, Cat Randall, wherever you are? Just kidding. All right, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, it was shellfish of us to make jokes about cats in the middle of your call.
I just had I wanted to touch on something. I wanted to ask Dr. Brucato because I think it was either last week you talked about your father. Did he commit suicide?
No, not mine. My father passed away from cancer.
Okay. Well, I thought that you said your father. I'm sorry. Okay. Well, my mother did.
Oh.
And I thought maybe I thought that's what you said, and I didn't want to like type it out last week.
But I have known people who have taken their lives. I have, and so I understand that phenomenon. You know, the experience of that absolutely, and of course I've known many patients who've been touched by people who have. So yeah, that's a topic that I think the only topic I find more important perhaps than talking about violence is talking about, towards others, is the violence people do towards themselves. The topic of suicide is worthy of 20 shows. It is a great darkness in this world. People that get to a place definitely want to talk about that. So let me hear.
It's been okay. Well, my dad passed when I was 16 on June 4th, 1991, and then my mom put me in the psych ward and said that I was depressed, and while I was in there, she committed suicide.
Oh.
And this has been over 33 years ago, and I'm still a mess. And I always say Josh is my shining light because he's been through hell and back. And I don't dream of her, and I don't dream of him. And I wanted to ask you going to seminary or whatever, not whatever, but you know what I mean. I always wonder, is she in hell? Or because, there's a heaven and hell, but I'm not like, I don't go to church like that lady said. I believe in God. I believe that somebody created all this beautifulness, and there has to be something that is divine. But it's just, I don't dream about them. I don't think I've even seen, like, dreamt about my mother. And I just wonder, like, I'm always like myself, and maybe that's why I have it.
First of all, the way that you're crying shows a great emotional connection to these people. And I wouldn't be feeling any particular way about not dreaming of them or not whatever. The reality is that clearly this is as fresh to you as if it happened this morning. And, you must have loved them. Right?
Yeah, they adopted me when I was 3 days old. And, right. And then, I was their only child. And I was very, they gave me anything I wanted, I loved it. It was wonderful. And I always say I used to love them. I'm not going to say that, it's stupid, but, I became an orphan at 16, and I used to always watch Annie when I was young, and it did the opposite.
Do you know that on Friday I am literally going to be with the entire cast of that movie that's still alive? of the movie Annie. That is so odd that you just mentioned.
Is Tim Curry gonna be there?
At a convention, Eileen Quinn.
Tim Curry gonna be there?
Who? Which one? Well, Tim Curry. I haven't met him.
Tim
But
Curry gonna be?
no. That's true. He had a stroke, infamously. You know, he suffered from a stroke, and
Yeah, I know it. I know.
Right. But anyway,
I
weird coincidence you mentioned Annie. Yeah.
I love him. I'm sorry. I love him.
Oh, I love him too. He's one of my favorite people.
He's touched. He has brought a lot of joy. And Robin Williams. That's another thing. That's what got me through. Robin Williams got me through a lot of stuff with his, his movies, and then he committed suicide. And I'm like, what is going on, Lord?
Right.
But I've had kids. I've tried my best, and I see a therapist, but I'm scared to go places. I'm scared that I don't know. I wanted to know if you could direct me in a way that I could talk to my therapist, because you're the top, you're the best, that could start helping me to feel good and to get over this and go on and have a good life, because I don't get out much.
Well,
sorry.
First of all, I have to be careful because, as I said, we can't turn this show into any kind of clinical intervention or whatever. But I'm going to speak to you from the heart.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to speak to you as a human, not as a doctor. Okay. And this is what I would say to you.
Okay.
First of all, try to imagine. I mean, because you have to remember, until recently, the church and other religious organizations, they didn't really understand about mental illness and things like that. And so suicide, even when people say committed suicide, right? There's this kind of thing of thinking that a person in like a rational, in a rational place just says, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to make everything easy for myself and I'm going to kill myself. But the reality is that a person who does that, I think we have to admit, is probably not emotionally fully choosing to do that in light of reason that because the self-preservation mechanism is gone in such an individual. And there's a kind of banality about life in such people. For example, years ago, there was a book called Suicide Notes, which was banned. I had a copy of it years ago. And what was fascinating about it was that what it proved is that when people talk about suicide, but they don't really intend to do it, they want someone to pay attention to them, or it's a cry for help or whatever, they tend to write these very detailed kind of notes about why they want to be dead and why they're in pain and whatever. But people who truly go through with suicide leave notes that sound the author. They're very banal. They either don't leave one or it's very banal. And it sounds like what the author said brilliantly was, it's like a person who's visiting the Grand Canyon and sends a postcard home, and instead of talking about the depth of the rocks and the beauty of the sky and the emotionality of it, says things like, I'll be home Tuesday, water the plants, take the mail in, Mom. And that's how suicide notes are in people that really are at the end of it's like there's a banality and a loss of meaning that is so intense that there's a kind of detachment from the reality of life. And I think the way you want to think about it is, can you imagine anybody trying to convince you, trying to tell you that a loving God that created people and loves them to the point of dying for them in Christian theology, right, would look at a person who went through that kind of hell and then say to them, when you get to the other side, I'm going to give you more hell.
Correct. Right.
I mean, it's an absurdity. It doesn't make any sense.
Not.
What really happened is that God on the other side would look at such a person with enormous compassion and understand that the person was in a darkness. God is a loving force, is not trying to destroy anybody or hurt them or punish them for suffering. And I think that we can't know what's inside a person's heart and why they do what they do. Let the good Lord sort that out. but don't be thinking about the way they used to think in medieval times, that you can't bury a person in the sunlight because they took their life, that kind of thing. They didn't understand about why people do that. And I think that what you have to do is you have to make meaning out of what happened, and in order to kind of move on with yourself, because you're punishing yourself, it sounds like, as if, like if I was better, somebody, would want to be here, that kind of thing, and the reality is that only a good person would worry about something like that. A very good person would worry about something like that. And you being a good person means that they did a good job. And you are one of the things that they're going to be able to present to the good Lord to justify what they did with their lives. You're a good person, and I'm sure they had a lot to do with it, don't you?
Oh, yes.
So then their life had a kind of harvest. And, I want you to think of it that way, that you aren't in that darkness. You understand that you have life coursing through you. And the point is to give. I once had a person come to see me who was a spiritual person, but who had hit a kind of darkness and was thinking about suicide. And I said to the person, if you want to take your life anyway, if you want to throw your life away anyway, why don't you give your life away to people that don't have any hands and arms and means to do anything? You could do it for them. You could be the arms and legs for them. Since you don't want to be here anyway, give your life away to them. And the person did, and they came back some years later and they said it was the best advice anybody ever gave me. I discovered the joy of charity. And they realized that in giving away their life, they cherished it. They didn't want to not be here anymore. They didn't want one more day. They one day of not being here because the day was being used for someone else, not for them. And when you give away life, you realize its value. And
usually give that.
Yeah. But you loved them very much. I can hear it. And I think I would just say to them in my heart, I can't know what was in your heart, and I'm not going to judge it. I only know that if you ever doubted for a minute that I loved you, I did, and I do. You understand? It's not going to make sense on this side. Did you ever see one of those big old tapestries that are on the wall in like an old museum or something, like one of those big old medieval tapestries? I love those tapestries because when you look underneath them, all the threads are just sort of random and like on top of each other in weird colors. But when you flip it,
Right.
Those threads come together into the most magnificent pictures, right?
Beautiful.
Yeah, and that's
a beautiful thing, yes.
And right now, you're looking at the threads on the underside. It's not until you get to the other side that you'll say, those threads came together into this picture. Don't try to see the picture here. It's not going to make any sense. You see what I'm saying? You got to look at it from the other side. Yeah. And I guess what I'm trying to say to you is stop trying to figure out how you figured into the equation of this. That's the point. Because the whole point, people get to that kind of not thinking like that.
Your mother.
All right.
Really quick before you go, your mother. I'm sure that you, for some reason, harbor some blame. I have that kind of. I feel that as well. With my situations, it's not your fault what happened, and your mother.
I know, but like everybody blame me. Oh, you don't even want.
Well, I'm telling. The reason they did that is because you're the strong one, and they wanted to put it on your shoulders because you are strong. I can hear it in your voice. Your mother's not in hell. God would not. God doesn't do things like that.
And you know what? God doesn't want you to be there right now. He doesn't want you to be in hell right now either.
Yeah, just because you don't dream of her.
Well, I don't want to be there either.
Well, just because you don't dream of her, just because, you know, you don't, things like that doesn't mean that she's, you know, separated from God and from you. She's still
no. Yeah, stop trying to. Let God sort these things out. We don't know people's hearts, but remember, don't put yourself through hell. You understand? And I'm
a real bad overthinker. So, and I have developed so many things in my mind and so many scenarios. If I do this, this might happen. This might happen. This might happen. This might happen. And I've gotten to the point where I'm like, I'm just not going to go anywhere. And I'm just going to, I literally sit here and just, I mean, that's why.
I would just,
thank you very much for listening to me.
Oh, thank you.
You're so welcome. You know what movie I would strongly recommend you see? One of my favorites. You should see Shadowland. Do you know that movie?
Shadowland? Okay, I've never seen it.
It's wonderful.
No, I'm not. I'm a big movie. No, I haven't seen it.
You know, it's probably a musical if I know Dr. Gary very well.
No. It's
I love
from Sounds of the Lamb, right? And Anthony Hopkins plays C.S.
Okay.
He plays C.S. Lewis, the writer who wrote the Narnia Chronicles and all these very wonderful books on religion. And his wife is played by Deborah Winger, who happens to be, in terms of endearment, which I mentioned earlier, like Deborah Winger Knight. It's a double Winger. And who, by the way, trivia, Deborah Winger was the voice of E.T., just in case you now, but the thing is, what it's about is that he lives this very predictable kind of mechanical existence, dinging back and forth between stations in life like a bus, and he likes everything in order and so forth. And a fan of his books comes to visit him, and he falls in love with her against his will. He doesn't want to, but he does. Can't help himself. He loves her, and she gets cancer and dies. And he, for all of his wisdom that he's given people for how to deal with death, it doesn't work on him. And he experiences grief and loss. And right before she dies, she says to him, you know, because his mother had died in real life. C.S. Lewis's mother had died when he was a little boy. And he didn't let himself love again until he was an older man and met this woman, Joy. I always thought there was a double meaning to the name of his book, Surprised by Joy, because Joy was the name of his wife. And it's very interesting.
Joy.
Oh, well, there you go. Right. All right. The joy cometh in the morning. And I think that's the what happens in the movie, and it's very beautiful, is that right before she dies, she says to him that the pain you're going to feel when I'm not here anymore is part of the deal. It's part of the deal for having the happiness now. Is that, you know, that's part of the deal, is that one day you'll feel pain, you're going to feel an ache because we loved each other. And he remembers that, and he says it at the end, you know. But it's a very important movie to see when you're dealing with mourning and loss. Sometimes I prescribe people a diet of movies, you know, that are very powerful. Now, you're going to sob.
I would love to know more.
You're going to sob.
I cried every movie. I cried.
Yeah, right.
I cried. I cried in Alien 3 because she killed herself and I bawled my eyes out. It was right after my mom had killed herself, and
well, then
Gordon Weaver kills herself, and I was like, what?
Well, and by the way, I agree, Bob. I love Claire Bloom, especially in the Haunting, and I love Joss Ackland, who I thought was terrific in the BBC version of Copper Beaches, the Sherlock Holmes story. I love Joss Ackland. I don't know too many Americans who know who he is, but I certainly do. Claire Bloom, you'd be more likely to find people who know she is, but they were both amazing. But anyway, I'm a movie buff, so don't.
I cried at the end of Dumb and Dumber.
Did you really?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I could see that having a tenderness to it. It's not the saddest.
He get on the bikini bus, remember?
Did you cry because of the bird with its taped on head?
Yeah, dude. They took advantage of that little kid in the wheelchair that was blind.
That little boy, yeah.
That was pretty.
A pretty
That little boy.
Pretty bird.
I want to ask the caller: Did it help you in any way to call?
Yes, it did. I'm feeling a lot better, and I appreciate you, Dr. Gary and Josh. You know I love you. So,
thank you so
much. Sorry I haven't been around, but I needed a break.
Not a problem at all. And thank you for calling. And I hope
you don't have to apologize for a little moment. Why do you have to apologize for a little moment of happiness? You know, one time I was with my little nephew. I was with my little nephew one time, and he was eating ice cream, and I started to give him a speech about the calories or something about the ice cream. And he said something like, sometimes ice cream is good for you. Well, he was right.
It sounds like Little Miss Sunshine there.
She's 100% right. There is a wisdom to realize sometimes it's okay to have ice cream in life. You get what I'm saying?
Or chicken big.
Yeah, it's just like Little Miss Sunshine.
It's about balance.
All right. Well, thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it. And you have a great night. And I love these shows. So keep doing them, okay?
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
All right, good night, guys.
Doesn't that inject a shot in the arm, Josh, when you realize that you could touch a life, you know, with just a few minutes of conversation?
My favorite part of doing these shows is that you know, people that have gone through trauma, and that's a lot of people that watch these types of shows, and not just those kinds of people, but people that just empathize, sympathize. It's a beautiful thing, because life is really difficult to navigate, man. It's so tough
and lonely.
And the thing is, you gotta take. Unfortunately, life is all about ebb and flow. You know, it's some days are fantastic, some days are awful, but when you encompass it all together, that's just called life. Some days are good, some days are bad, some days are better than others, some days aren't that bad, but they're not that great. It's just called living. And I've realized
they're like lessons
every day. Every single day, man. And a lot of people, you know, like they always say, like, why aren't you more upset about something like this or something like that? It's like, I get upset about the things that need to be to you know, for me to be upset about. You're not going to really get me flustered by calling me dumb. You know, I'm not going to, it's something I'm not going to overreact to something like that. I'm not going, you know, if somebody messes up like your food order, I don't care about that. It doesn't bother me. I don't send things back. I don't complain to people, you know, that are in the service industry or just trying to help in general. And I get really I do get frustrated at people that do that kind of stuff. And here's a great question for you, Dr. Gary, and then we'll take another call. Does Dr. Gary ever get the blues? Probably.
I mean, I'm a human being, but I mean, you know, contrary to popular belief, you know, I guess I'm a human being. And of course, there are things that are going to do that to everybody, especially, you know, I mean, when you do the kind of things all day long that I'm doing, I mean, your empathy is going to make you look at the world sometimes and get disgusted. But I think being a person that, you know, is pretty high functioning and has done a lot of work on myself and so forth, I try to find ways to kind of make meaning out of it and not get sucked into the darkness, and to remember the temporariness of the transience of everything. Remember that everything in life, good and bad, is temporary. The saddest thing and the best thing about life are the same. Again, balance. So when a person comes crying that they've experienced a loss, you say to them, well, by implication, that means that you're upset that things are temporary. Therefore, the pain is temporary too. It's all temporary, everything. And when you realize that every single thing that's on the front page of the newspaper right now that might sicken you, it's going to wind up in the dustbin of history. All of it. Right? This too shall pass. It all passes. And it might be painful on the way, but it's all going. And, you know, and I think the only thing that doesn't pass away are these acts of kindness and love that you introduce into the world that start a kind of ripple effect that are larger than you, so that when you're not here anymore, the act is still out there kind of echoing and reverberating. And, you know, but remember, at the end of your life, I mean, how many people are going to come to the funeral or go to the cemetery? I mean, a couple of people that loved you.
It's a great question.
You know, just it's like one of those tombstones with a name on it that you don't know who the person is. You see a person sobbing, it's probably their kid or some person whose life was touched by them, but it's only going to be a few people at the end of the day. And the really rich people and the really poor people, they're going to wind up in the same place. As the old proverb says, at the end of the chess game, the king and the pawn go in the same box.
That's a fact. I like that. 330, you're on the air. We're gonna take a couple more calls. Go ahead.
Josh?
Yep.
Hello.
Hi, Josh.
Hi, how are you?
How are you?
I'm fine.
Do you remember me?
Did you call in last
Do you
show?
remember me? I know. It's probably been about 10 months. You're on a different time zone than me.
No, I could. Well, remind me, and I'm sure I will remember you.
I had the monkey.
Oh, yeah.
I had the monkey.
Yeah. Okay, now I remember.
Anyway.
Did you say you had a monkey?
Thank you for.
Yeah.
Yes,
Wait,
I did.
You own a monkey? You actually have a monkey? Oh, I love you already. What kind of monkey is it?
It's the kind of monkey that's a monkey.
It was a bonnet macaque.
Oh, where the heck did you even get one?
No, well, you can buy them. They're very expensive. It was a baby. It was a bonnet macaque. And I live in Ohio. And when there was a person that had a lot of wild animals and let them loose, and it caused a lot of chaos, so Ohio changed their laws. So I couldn't have them anymore.
Oh my God. That's a
But I'm telling you, it was a sweetheart.
Of course. That's also called a zati. Those are a southern Indian monkey. They're adorable.
Yep.
Yeah, and
oh my gosh.
How big did it get?
They didn't get very big. They don't get very big. They get like about 30 pounds at the most at growth.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty
which
big.
is kind of small compared to most monkeys.
30 pounds is a good size monkey.
They're really social. They have behaviors that look almost like humans when it comes to socialization.
Did it wear a diaper?
Yes, it did.
That's the best.
And he was very human. He was just like a baby. I would like rock him to sleep.
Yeah.
He had the run of the house. And he was very loving. He was just such a sweetheart.
Yeah. One of the things I love about that, one of the things I find fascinating about that species is that, and I know it's weird that I know so much about such random things. Forgive me, I can't help myself. But
yeah, it is weird.
The male of that species is quite docile. Unlike a lot of male animals, they don't have those exaggerated, aggressive tendencies. They're very docile, very kind, males. And but I've never met someone who owned one. That's very cool. I like that you have the distinction of being different, in some way, unique, right? The fact that you had one is great. Did it sit on your shoulder and everything, or did you rock it? Like, how did you?
Yes.
Amazing.
Did it?
Yeah, I was rocking.
Symbols
That's how
that
he
would
would go to
smash?
sleep. Did he have what?
Did you give it symbols that would smash together?
Like monkey chimes, like yeah, I know.
Symbols? No. No, but I know what you're talking about.
Well, anyway, so I assume you didn't call in to talk about your love of simians, you know. So
no,
so,
you're the one that went deep on it, Dr. Gary, not her. She just said, "Yeah, remember, I'm the one that had the monkey." You go, "What kind of monkey? What was the social security
I can't
number?"
help myself. What do you want me to do? Here, you know? I can't help myself. You can't.
Well, let me tell you, they're
not get me worked up. I love animals.
Yeah, me too.
I do too.
Me too. I think I've had almost every kind.
Really?
Anyway,
what about a
the
hippo?
reason I called.
You had every kind of animal?
No, I haven't. Sorry.
She said almost every kind.
Okay, no.
Okay.
Relax.
Thank you, Josh. Anyway, the reason I called was because I'm sorry. I've always had a connection I felt with you, Josh, over things that happened. I lost one of my sons when he came home from Iraq, and my other son that was in Iraq also came home with TBI and has never been the same. But going back to the dreams, I have dreams that I'm always, and he's at different ages, that I'm always finding him and I'm running after him. And I try to save him. And I'm 67. I was raised in a generation that you become either a mother, a secretary, or a nurse. So I chose to be a mother. And I have 5 kids. I have my 3 sons that are all like 40 and up. I have my daughter that I adopted when she was 12, so she's in her 40s. And then I have a girl that I adopted from China, and she's 13.
Wow.
And but I think we can do a lot of good in the world. You know,
you're a great rescuer, aren't you?
But I don't know.
Everything. I mean, you practically had a menagerie in your home of living things and of animals and people and so forth. I just think that's beautiful that you have it's like there's plenty of room on the ark, you know, that kind of thing. You don't just save the people, you got to get the animals too.
You are loving this monkey, aren't you?
I'm sorry.
Get one. You should get one.
I sent you a video of him.
Yeah, I remember. It was on a YouTube video of him. I remember. Yeah.
Well, you know what it is? It's because you have to think about the kind of person.
This is Cherry and Max, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm sorry, I didn't say that. Yeah, it's Cherry and Max.
No, it's all right. No, I remember.
But Josh, what people are saying in the chat is that they feel like the caller is talking about a very dark, painful subject, and that we can't get stuck on the monk. But I think what I'm trying to say is that it says something about your character as a human, that you have a depth of love and of a desire to rescue and kind of be there for living creatures that is so profound that you even go beyond people into the realm of the exotic. And I think it says something about who you are, and I think it is connected to the discussion of loss and attachment and all that. You know what I mean? You're a rescuer, and I think that is going to figure into things, because for a rescuer to lose even one sheep is a big deal.
Yeah.
Rescuers don't lose anything. I mean, I know people like that who won't even kill a bug. They'll make you take the bug in a cup and bring it out.
I don't kill spiders.
Well, there you are. And I think that's a beautiful thing. But I'm sure it's connected in some way to the larger point of your call. that you have that sensitivity, and I think that's beautiful. That says something about you immediately. Think about the kind of person that would want to go out and make a pet out of a monkey. Just a very special kind of person, don't you think?
No question about it. And I've always been drawn to people that love animals because I love animals. And so I've always, especially like I'd probably be scared of like a monkey or something, like a wild monkey, but a little one with they're precious. But I see what you're saying. You know, that she's a nurturer by nature, and that,
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah, I agree.
And think about the symbolism of a person who says, you may think this is a scary animal, but they're not scary. If you take them in and you get to know them, they're docile and sweet and beautiful. I mean, it's like a person who says, don't be afraid of something just because you don't understand it.
Right.
And if you get to know it, you'll love it. You're going to love it more than anything in the world. Well, that's a great wisdom. There's a lot to learn from somebody who understands that, I think.
Tell me a little bit more about your dream, though.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I have the one type dream that I have is just like you, Josh. Josh, like I dream about my son being alive, and then I wake up and he's not.
Yeah, I mean,
so it's kind of like, the grief starts.
I know. Yeah.
It's like
Josh, why don't you two enter into a little dialogue, and I'll step back because I think the caller feels a special bond with you, and I feel like you could do a lot of good. You just open up your heart a little bit here. I'm just going to sort of slip away for a second because I think you two need to kind of hash something out here.
Sure. So when you're saying that, you're looking for your son that has passed, and you wake up, and those dreams, I mean, how, in all honesty, like how real do those feel to you? I mean, they're just astronomically real, feels like, to me at least.
Yeah, they are, because when you wake up, it's like you start to grieve all over again.
Yeah, and it could definitely even shift your entire day. I mean, like I said, it takes me some time to get my bearings when I have those kinds of dreams. I don't dream so much about my mother that way, but I mean, I have before, but mostly about my grandfather, because of how much older I was, and how I wanted to keep my promise. Cause I mean, I would promise, I promise you, I won't do that to you. I won't do that to you. I won't. And in the dreams, I feel, for some reason, I feel like I let him down, even though in reality, I didn't. I carry a lot of unnecessary guilt, and I have my whole life. And I know, I'm sure that you can relate to that.
Yeah, I was thinking that when you were talking about it. It's like I think there's especially when it comes to like my son purposely, I think, took his life, and I think the one theme with all his friends, everyone, there is a guilt. Whether, you may not be guilty of any of it, and chances are you're not, because you can't control things. But there is a guilt that comes. And I think that's really hard. I mean, I feel a lot of guilt.
Sure.
And I think, like, I can't think of one person that he knew, and everyone loved him. I mean, when his funeral was huge, between the military and his friends and everyone. That's what everybody talks about, is I could have done this or that, but you couldn't, because you didn't know, and this or that, you don't even know what it is. So I think we all carry a lot of guilt when it comes to circumstances like that. you know, even though we shouldn't and we couldn't have done anything, like you probably would have liked to have done something as far as your grandfather, just to make him like not be gone, if that makes sense.
I have, this is how crazy guilt can be. I have guilt that I wasn't older when my mother was killed, that I could have stopped it if I was the person I am today. I was, and I don't even know that to be true now, but when I got older, I remember just thinking, why did I have to be just a little kid? Why couldn't I be the person I was today? Because I could have done something. I could have saved her. And like I said, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's how guilt works. It's insane. And I know that that's an unreasonable thing. I can't change the time. I can't change what somebody else did. I don't pay for the sins of my father, but sometimes I feel like I have to. Sometimes I feel like he's my responsibility, even though he's my father. You know, like I'm responsible for the things that he did. I tell you, I feel tremendous guilt that he tried to kill my aunt. I love her to death. It ruined a huge part of her life, and I have had to work past so many things that I just had to realize that that's crazy that you feel that way. But the thing is, and I know that you feel this as well, it's because we have compassionate hearts. You know, I mean, you know, I think about it. I think about it all the time. It's like, why am I here and somebody else isn't? You know, it's a really weird kind of feeling. And I know what you mean about the guilt. The guilt is just can be overwhelming. I have with time learned to manage that and realize that a lot of my guilt is just is unnecessary, which helps a little bit, but you still, I don't know, you just, for some reason, you just feel guilty about stuff that you couldn't control, that you can't control. You know, I mean, you just, like you said, you know, this person could have done this and this person. I used to hear that all the time growing up about my mom. My grandmother on my dad's side, she's like, I was out of town. If I was in town, I could have stopped it. That's what she thought. I'm like, no. And she's like, I should have been around. And I'm like, no, that. And to me, I'm going, that's not logical. But then I would do the same thing, make up something. Well, if I was older, and you're going, yeah, you can't. That's just, it's unreasonable. It's not a reasonable thing. But I know what you mean. And
isn't that crazy though?
It is. It really, really is. But the thing is,
it's why people become rescuers.
Exactly.
Because you can't save that person, but you can go out and save another. You know, and remember in The Silence of the Lambs, when Dr. Lecter really wants to understand the motivations and the psychology of Clarice Starling, and he asks the story of her worst memory in childhood. Remember, and she tells the story about when her father was killed by he was like a watchman, and somebody, he walked in on a burglary and he was shot. And then she was made to go live with her uncle in Montana on a ranch. And her worst memory, according to what she tells him, was that she woke up and she heard the screaming of the lambs that were being slaughtered. She didn't make the connection that those sheep became symbolic of her father, right? But she decided that if she could just save one sheep, maybe, it would be okay somehow. So she picks one up and she tries to run away with it, but it's too heavy. And then they find her, with the sheep. And then Dr. Lecter says to her, "What became of your lamb, Clarice?" And she says, "They killed it," And and then he says, you think that if you save poor Catherine, that's the woman that the serial killer Jamie Gum has in his possession in a pit, and the idea is there's a race against time to save her. And he says, you think if you save poor Catherine, you won't wake up ever again in the dark to that awful screaming of the lambs. Well, what is the point of this? The point is that what he's saying to her, even though he's a twisted person who, by the way, after she leaves, orders a special order of lamb chops for dinner because he's such a sadist. What he is basically saying to her is, you think that if you could save that lamb, who is of course her father, right? If you could, Catherine Martin, if you save that woman, it'll be like you're saving your father. You couldn't save that lamb, so you tried to save a lamb that was in the flock, and you couldn't save that one, so now you want to save Catherine. So this is personal to you. See? And that's the thing, you got to understand, like, when you're a rescuer, you got to ask yourself, like, what am I rescuing? And Josh, don't you do it? Don't you rescue people through doing this show?
Look, if I do, I'm honored.
And it's not conscious, right? You make meaning out of crimes and terrible things that happen to people. You channel it. Isn't that beautiful?
I mean, I connect with people. There's this show on Netflix called I Am a Killer. I don't know if anybody's seen it, but it's a very well done.
Oh yeah, show. Very well done.
And when I watch it, because there's a new season just came out, and I'd been watching it. And when I watch it and I hear these people talk, about the murders that happened in their family, and they kind of encompass everybody, like every angle, every side, from the prosecutor to the criminal, to the brothers, sisters of the criminal, to the victims and the victims' children and all that stuff. And I sit back and I listen to these and I go, I know these people. I know them all.
That's right.
Every single one.
Because they're you.
They're me. I'm them. We're all in the same club. And I was just watching one the other day where, a guy was just bawling about his brother who had committed an awful murder. And, he misses him, and, he's doing life. And I remember just going, that's my uncle right there. I see him. I've heard that. I've seen that face. I've heard that. And then I hear the mother say, not my son would never do that. I can't believe that he did that. I've heard that. I've seen that. I've heard it. I know these people. I am those people. And so if you want to talk tragedy, and there's a lot of people, not just on this platform, but just in general, that think that they know tragedy, and they really, maybe in their world they do. Most people haven't survived the stuff that I've witnessed, and it's hard for me to ever explain to anybody that this isn't, it's not like I have fun talking to people. I have a good time, discussing, certain things. But when it comes down to it, the things that we're talking about are absolutely tragic. You lost your son. That's tragic. Dr. Gary, you've had tragedy. I've had tragedy. And I just want to be able to show people that you can get through it with some sort of normal, normal life, but it's not always going to be that way. There are days that are just awful. There are days that you feel emboldened. There are days that you don't even want to get out of bed. And the tragedy of that whole thing is that I didn't didn't cause this issue. I didn't do it. But for some reason, I take guilt from it. And so if people can look at me in any way, however it is, if they can look at me and say, he's been through it and I can manage, I'll be okay eventually. I remember there's a young girl, her name was Hannah, and her brother, his name was Justin. Her father killed their mother and hid her body. And I remember speaking with her, and she was 14 and he was 16, and he didn't have a lot to say, but she had a little bit more to say. She wanted to go be with her dad, who was in prison and will be in prison the rest of his life. And she says, I just miss my dad. I miss my mom. And I said, I know, I get it. And she goes, do you think I'll ever stop loving my dad? She goes, because I know that he did an awful thing. And I said, even if you did, and I don't think that you will, it's not going to make you feel any better. Just by, it just, it doesn't change anything. All that matters really in life is to keep pushing forward and trying somehow, some way to create a normal life for the people that are around you. Like Dr. Gary said earlier, my children, now that they're growing up and moving on, all I ever wanted to do was protect them from everything. And now they're out there in the world and I can't anymore, but I did everything that I could. I always put them first. My life wasn't important. It was them, and from every aspect of it, I remember there would be times, and it used to not bug me, but I'd be like annoyed, right? There'd be like one drink left in the refrigerator. And they were always very good about asking, can I have this last one? And I would always say yes. And then I go, dang it. And it was just but I would never deny my children anything, no matter how small. It was just a simple question. They just wanted that or this. And all I wanted to do was make them as comfortable as possible and make their lives. Like I said, when my father would come up for parole and they would get really worried, that would piss me off to no end. I mean, it would make me so mad that his bull crap.
I remember you saying that.
It would affect my kids. I hated that. And so look, if people can look at me in any way and say, hey, if he can do it, I can do it. If he can, manage, if he can, right, whatever it is, I obviously would take that as a major compliment. I don't feel special in any way. But I do.
That's what humility is.
Well, but I do know that I do know tragedy, and it's something that I am able to talk about.
Well, I think it's very admirable. Both of you are very admirable people, of course. And I think, to take pain and to discover that, like, for example, if you're in a kind of hell, like if you imagine hell, which is all about the absence of love and being alone, I mean, you could instantly turn hell into heaven by just turning to the person next to you and saying, hot in here, isn't it? As soon as you do that, it's not anymore, right? Because the whole point is that hell is about not having anybody to love and be loved by. And I always thought, to your point, Josh, about parents, that one of the things that I've always found so beautiful about Christian theology is the idea of that we were taught to think of God not as a deity, but as a daddy. If you actually look at the Aramaic word that is used for father, it really means daddy, Abba. And you think about, for example, the Our Father, right? And the being taught that you should think of God like a parent basically means that the message is that to understand how God loves you, you have to think about the way you would love a child. That sloppily, foolishly, ridiculously, to the point of not even caring if you die to save them. And if you don't get that, you don't understand how loved and kissed and caressed we are by this benevolent force that created us. And you miss out on that. It's when you project the awfulness of human beings onto God that you miss that point. But think of the highest of human beings, the way a parent loves you in that, there's the whole world, right? But you are my precious kind of one child. And I think when you understand that, it gives you such a great joy. And you imitate him when you love in that way. And what you guys are doing is you're loving even things that go beyond, the in the corners and the crevices of the world, the people that are forgotten and overlooked. In the caller's case, the animals. And think about that, the idea of saying, I'm going to go out and I'm going to love even you, right? And Josh, when you go on the airwaves like this, I mean, look at what you're doing here. I mean, this has become like a haven for the tempest tossed and people, and that are kind of lost. And so I wouldn't belittle what you're doing at all. I don't. I think it's a kind of special calling, and I think it's beautiful. I really do. And if the audience disagrees with me, they'll say so. But I think they agree with me. Yeah. I'm just here for the ride. I like that you invite me on. It's an honor.
Well, I'll tell you that it's not that I belittle it. And I do think that these shows do good, but not just selfishly. Is part of it. It's good for me too, to be honest with you. I mean, I do.
It is. You're right.
Yeah, it is. It's helpful to me, and I do think that it is helpful to people that want to call and just maybe want to be heard, that haven't been heard. Maybe they, there are people that say, I relate to you, or I do get a lot of people that say I look up to you for your strength. And I got to tell you, I'm not that strong. I'm not. I mean, I've just been tested.
I think you channel your mother.
I do too. Actually, I really do. I think.
Can I say something?
Of course.
Yeah, Josh. Okay. I want to say, I know how you feel like when people think you're doing good. When my son passed, I was a probation officer and I worked with the court. So I was able to, I saw what veterans were going through, and I was able to help start a veteran treatment court. And I poured everything into that, helping others. And you're doing that. And that really helps me to heal. And I think it helps you too. And the other thing I want to say is, and this is not always, a lot of people don't want to hear this, but forgiveness, and I know the hairs stand up on a lot of people when I say that, but when my son passed, it was actually at the drug dealer's house. And I was at the funeral home, and I don't mean to get dark, but I think this is important, and I emailed you this years ago. But all of a sudden in the funeral home, things got real quiet, but I could hear people talking. Well, I went over to my sons and their friends, and it turned out that person was in the car in the parking lot and wanted to come in. And I don't know what came over me, but it was not me. I know it was God, but people don't want to hear that either. But anyways, I went out into the parking lot and met him at his car. He was still in his car. And he told me, he said, I just want to say how sorry I am. And, your son meant a lot to me. And it was so weird. I took his hand and I took him into the funeral home and I forgave him. And that forgiveness freed me. It freed me like I can't even explain. And I wish everyone would be able to forgive to help themselves, because I felt so locked in evil at what had happened. And it was almost like I was combating evil with good. And there's just such a freeness. And I don't know. Like I said, I get a lot of flack when I say anything about forgiving people, but it really is freeing. And I couldn't tell anyone else how to do it, because it just it's like a gift to me. But I really want to share that with you, Josh.
Well, I really do appreciate it. And I tell you,
incredibly wise person. It's a real treat to encounter somebody like you. You and Josh, it's good that you get along so well, because you'll have to spend eternity with each other in heaven.
That's right. Yeah, true. I'll tell you another thing too. Why I am so open about my family, my story, and everything that we've been through is because I talk about other people's. We talk about other people's situations, and I think it's only fair, that I share my story with people. I'm going to share something with you guys right now that I just found this picture for the very first time just the other day. The last picture of my family together. This is the last photo that we took. So that's me. I'm the little guy. There's my mother in the pink dress. My father, my sister, and my godparents. This was after our baptism, and I was looking at that photo, and I could see in my mother's face that you can tell she's the only one that's not smiling. Her life was at this point was very rough, and she was spending her time protecting us. You see my father, who had no thoughts whatsoever. And I'll tell you that this photo doesn't bother me, because this is my family. This is where I come from. It's a very real place. And my mother holding me there, it ended too quick. But I tell you that that's how she was with me. That's how I always was dressed. I was always had a haircut. She just took really, really good care of me and my sister. And I miss her a lot. She was just 23 years old when she died. 23. Wow. It's a kid.
I'm so sorry, Josh.
No, that's okay. It's okay. I mean, it's just part of my story. It's just part of who I am. It's where I come from, and I'm comfortable to share it with you.
I could tell you this, Josh, because I've been watching you for a long, long time. I'm usually on rewatch because we're in different time zones. But your mother's story, your story has really, really touched me. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. So I hope somehow you can take comfort somehow, knowing that even if you don't hear that from people, you really do make a difference by sharing your story.
I appreciate that.
Well, I think that by doing the kind of thing that Josh does, he makes her brief life worth it. It was worth it. She won't go back and take it away, because it led to something good.
I'll tell you that if I had more photos. I don't have any videos of her or anything, but if I had them, I would share them because she existed. She was a person. And even though it's been all these years, she, my mom, and I'm proud of her. I'm grateful to her. She saved my life and my sister's life and my aunt's life. A lot of other people. She was the greatest. And some reason she was the sacrificial lamb that day, because there could have been a lot of other people, that went. That, I mean, he wasn't there to make friends. You know what I'm saying? And she ended up bearing the brunt of it, unfortunately.
Are you saying you're saying, Josh, that you feel that in a way she died to keep other people alive?
Yes, no question about it. And she confronted him. While look, and I don't want to get too deep into it because I know it's an awful story. I mean, there were people in the house that were pulling the refrigerator away from the door or from the wall, hiding behind it. People hiding under beds, under the front deck of the house, and she was the only one that didn't.
But on the outside, it's a horror story. On the inside, if you understand her, it was a love story. No greater love hath any man than this, to lay down his life for a friend. The reality is that what she did, the nobility, the shining goodness that she was in the middle of all of that, is the point, not the protagonist in the story. It's her, the center of the hurricane that wasn't affected by the hullabaloo, remained good in her spirit. That's the idea. And she's proud of you. I have no doubt of it. One day, when you meet her, she'll say, I was proud of you. I saw everything you ever did. You don't think she sees everything you do? I'm sure that you make her very proud. Don't ever forget it.
I'm sure of it. Well, Jerry, I appreciate you calling. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Josh. And you take care of you too, Dr. Brucato.
You're a very special person. What I like about you is that you're walking around in the world, and you probably seem to most people like a very ordinary soul. But the truth is that you're a kind of a giant spirituality. You're like a giantess of spirituality. You understand things by just virtue of being yourself that it takes people like me many years of meditation and reading to figure out. And I don't think you could have that knowledge if it didn't come from a very special place. And that means we're in the presence of a very blessed person.
No question.
And so remember that there's a reason you're in this world. You were kept here. You got a lot of work to do, and a lot of monkeys and other animals to save, and people to save. And so you just keep doing what you're doing. It makes the world better. I think the world is a lot more interesting with you in it. And so go.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, what a special person.
Thank you. God bless you both.
All right. Bye-bye.
Yeah, that was beautiful, Josh.
Absolutely. Very, very kind. We always end up heart to heart here towards the end, which is a great thing. I mean, that's what we're here to do. We're here to talk. And
you think your audience likes it? Are they enjoying these? I mean,
it seems like they do. They show up. Sure, they sure do.
Are you growing? Are you getting more and more people? Are you finding?
I think so. Yeah.
We've got to try to get Chris on so we can do a call.
I offered him tonight, but he's under the weather, but he said he'll come on the next time. And,
I hope so. I love when Chris is here.
Yeah, he'll be on. He's under the weather right now, and but I
hope he's watching so we could tell him how much we miss him.
Yeah, we do. We love you, Chris, and I hope you get better soon. And Dr. Gary, thank you so much for being here. We are at 2 hours and 45 minutes. I try and make them 2 hours, but it just doesn't work all the time. Sometimes you just get talking, and you know what?
Beautiful. And I also, one of the things I always like about what we do is I think, we're living in a time of such terrible toxic masculinity, that kind of thing. It's having a terrible effect on it. And what I try to do, and I think you try to do, and it's a beautiful thing, is to kind of try to show people that men can go to a tender place, be sensitive, love people, get deep, be open with their feelings, and it's perfectly okay. I think society would be a lot better off if men were taught to do that instead of reaching for the holster. And I mean, you've been affected by a person who was toxically masculine, weren't you?
100%.
Right. And it's one of the things I've had people write to me and say, oh, I've been very hurt in this world and by a man or by anyone. And when I watch you and Josh, I feel that there are people out there that are kind of kind and care and so forth. I think it's very corrective for some people. So I love it. But I think having Chris just is like the cherry on the cake, because he's such a sweet, kind of Winnie the Pooh of a person. He's got that kind of Pooh Bear kind of quality where he's sweet and kind of lovable and kind and innocent and everything. So I love it. And fun. I love when he joins us. So, but anyway, so listen, like C.S. Lewis, I don't like to leave emails he didn't have emails, letters in his case, unread or unresponded to. I think it's very important to answer. Someone takes the time to reach out. Anyone who's ever written to me knows how much I try to follow up with them and how seriously I take things. And so always feel free to contact me. I'm very easy to find in terms of my email. But sometimes people write and they ask me to direct them to someone who could help them. Sometimes people just want to tell their story. Sometimes people have been affected by violent crime. There are some people who have cold cases that have affected them, and I direct them to people, like the Cold Case Foundation. So, feel free to do that. And I know, Josh, you get plenty of messages too.
I do. Yeah. labyrintarmy@gmail.com. Feel free.
Somebody told me in the chat here that they sent a message to you for me. So maybe you could forward that to me. I don't know if you know what the person is referring to, but so feel free to do it. It's so easy to find me in my email address online. So just anyway, all right. Well, I think that was beautiful. Any other final?
I think that's it, man. I appreciate you being here, Dr. Gary, and everybody in the chat. Thank you for being kind and respectful. Sorry,
as long as you're not sick of me, I'm happy to be here.
No, I'm not. I'm not sick of you. I don't really get sick of people, man. If I like you, I like you. You're the man, dude. You're a kind-hearted inspiration, and you give me really good life advice, not just as a doctor, but as a friend. I mean, you do. You've helped me in many ways. And,
it gives my life meaning to know that there's people that feel that way, and
I enjoy our friendship as well. And so,
of course, it's been a lot of fun. I'm very grateful to Chris for introducing us. And if anybody has any questions that are burning, that they didn't feel comfortable to call in about or whatever, reach out to us. And thank you for all of you for being with us all this time. And coming every time we have one of these, you see the same faces, loyal, true blue followers, of the show. And I think that's wonderful. Josh, do you have any interesting programs coming up? Any guests or anybody that?
No, not really. Actually, no, not that I could think of. I mean,
your one on the lawsuit was great. I loved it. I thought it was really interesting.
Oof, yeah, that thing was. I mean, that thing's a bear, I'll tell you that. And it's so divisive, but I was just there reading it and covering. I've covered the Sebastian Rogers case from, I would say, almost the beginning. A young man, Trevor Lee, that was just in here earlier. I don't know if he's still here, but he was a local, and he was the one that I watched his show about it, and I went, wow, this thing, nobody was touching it. Nobody touched it with a 10-foot pole. And then we started doing it, and it started gaining some traction, and then it turned into this something that I wish that it wouldn't have, but you know, there's not much that I can do about that. I just hope that the young man is found safe and alive, and that those are my thoughts. As Summer Wells, same thing. You know, I haven't forgotten about Summer Wells. I haven't forgotten about Sebastian. I you know, just like I would never forget about the Cal City boys, and all of them mean something to me. So anyway, I'd thank you guys for being
here. And by the way, did it turn out to be a RICO thing? Did they?
That's how they're filing it. But
fascinating. That's a really pretty sort of novel way of thinking about that, right?
It's
like
quite a roadmap that they've done. It is.
Yeah, it was really interesting.
And somebody that sees court documents and things like that all the time, you saw it, and I mean it's pretty detailed, man. Pretty detailed. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that say, "Oh, it's not gonna." I don't know. We'll see what happens with it. But it is something I've never seen before. So hopefully,
yeah.
But hopefully,
I thought it was good. I think you did a really good job of that, and I commend you. I think, you know, I hope people have watched it.
I appreciate it.
Really interesting stuff. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Gary.
Of course.
And let's see here. All right, guys. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. I'll catch you on the next one. Thank you, guys. Lab rats. You guys are awesome.